Welcome to the Project with Sam and Lewis, the podcast with the mission to cover every project throughout pop culture and history. I'm Sam.
I'm Lewis.
And I'm David.
And this is the second episode of Projoctober.
It certainly is the spookiest month of the year where we just cover the spookiest topics we can find. Last week round, we did the Tremors TV show.
We did.
Second week of Projoctober. For the first time, we've done a book. I've read a book.
And Lewis has written a book just for today.
I didn't, unfortunately. No, I've read a book and I'm going to be telling the story of said book, Project Nemesis, to David and Sam. And you may have noticed we've got a special guest with us today.
We do.
Hello, that's me. This is my second appearance. Thank you.
Yeah, what was your first? Oh, it was Blair Witch Project.
Blair Witch.
Last Projoctober. So it's been nearly a year.
One of my OG films.
Yeah.
We had a good time with that. I think you weren't the first guest, but you were the first planned guest, I think. You had your mind. Yeah. But before we get into anything, we have time codes in the episode description. So if you want to skip past any of this lovely stuff here, you can skip straight to the end where we'll be discussing Dragon House and potentially She-Hulk, I think.
Yeah, I think we will.
Plus some other stuff that each of us have brought along to talk about.
Yeah, I've definitely brought other stuff along.
But before that, since you were last on the show, David, how have you been?
Yeah, I've been good. It's been a long old year. Let's just say that. But yeah, I've been consuming media, having fun, changing jobs, etc. Life stuff, really.
Oh, that sounds fun. I mean, I already know all that, so...
yeah. It's more for the listeners than anything.
Yes.
Yeah.
How are you, Sam?
Yeah, I'm okay. Yeah. Kind of busy-ish week so far, but that's pretty standard. I don't have too much normal extra things to say. I'm tripping over my words already. We have a slightly different mic situation this week, so there may be a slight different kind of atmosphere.
I think it'll be fine.
I'm sure it'll be fine, yeah. How about you, Lewis?
Yeah, busy week at work. Been having to learn loads of new stuff as well as, doing my job. So it's been quite stressful, but we're nearly at the end of the week. So looking forward to a nice relaxing weekend. And a lot of this week has also been taken up by reading a book and making notes on a book whilst I read
when
it.
did you finish this book?
Midnight last night. Honestly, reading a book takes twice as long. We need to make notes on it as you go.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah.
I was like, 300 pages, I can whack that out in a couple of days. No, it was actually a lot harder. But yeah, I've been all right.
Good. So we have a first segment. What's that called, Lewis?
Oh, you mean Project News.
Woo!
So as every week, I have Googled the word project and found a couple of news articles for us to talk about. These may get a bit more conversation from Sam than David.
Okay.
Because it's specifically stuff that we've covered in the project.
I'm just going to let David do all the talking.
I will try my best. Even if it's total BS, I'll try.
So the first one is from Bristol Live.
Oh, David, what you got to say about Bristol Live?
It's from Bristol, and I believe it's live.
And it is Sky TV series The Lazarus Project closes Bristol pub for filming.
Ooh.
So obviously the Lazarus Project being the series we spent most of our summer watching and covering on this pod.
Yeah.
They announced season 2 and we were looking forward to, them start filming soon. We were like, they'll probably get some news on them filming soon. And here it is. They have started filming. And they're going to have at least one scene in a pub, I think.
That's pretty standard. We had a couple in a pub last time, didn't we?
Yeah. But I don't really care too much about this article. The main thing is, I'm happy to hear that they have started filming season 2. So I'm definitely looking forward to that next year.
Me too. What about you, David? How do you feel about that?
I never watched the first one. But if it's good, I'll give it a watch, maybe in time for the second season.
I think you should. It was like a genuinely good
it was
series.
Actually really good. Yeah.
Yeah, I have been recommending it to people. So yeah, check it out. And listeners, listen to our episodes of the Lazarus
Listeners,
Book.
listen up. Got a message for you. I mean, imagine not everyone who's listening to this now will have listened to previous episodes.
No, but
we covered all 8 Lazarus episodes, so if you don't want to watch it, you can just listen to us talking about it.
Yeah, exactly. Not everyone has Now TV or Sky TV, so this is available on all podcast listening apps.
Wow.
The other bit of news that I've got is from NME. You may have heard of them. I was going to say what NME stood for, but I can't remember. New Music
Entertainment
Express, I think it was. New Musical Express.
That's
good guess, guys. Good guess.
And this is Project Zomboid's very big Build 42 update will introduce basements.
Okay, so that's something to talk about maybe in a future episode.
It may be. I didn't want to forget about it though. It's basically Project Zomboid, which we covered last year for Projoctober. Have brought out a version since then, but it looks like they're doing another expansion and kind of making the playability better and including more things. And they're going to have like a 32-story building and stuff like
wow,
that.
Okay. So they've gone from like 2 stories to like 32.
Yeah, and also basements and sewers, which could be quite an interesting concept. But yeah, Zomboid. Have you ever played Zomboid, David?
No, what's the kind of premise of this game? Like, I presume it's a game. It sounds like a game. The way you're talking about it.
It is a game. Sam, do you want to explain Zomboid?
It's a bit like a survival kind of horror, I guess. It's a bit like, we played Valheim, David, didn't we?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's that kind of thing where you're like in a world and you're surviving, you're getting, I was going to say ingredients. I guess
Like
it's
resource-based
yeah,
game.
but it's very like the standard mode is very like you can die really easily and you can get infected and stuff. Quite hardcore.
Okay, yeah. Can you do like co-op multiplayer?
Yeah. So when we first played it, they didn't have proper co-op involved, but that has since been added. So that may be something we'll talk about very shortly.
Nice.
Maybe a teaser for something coming up
very soon.
Yeah, I couldn't miss the opportunity to talk about that. But that is the project news for this week. Not too much exciting stuff, but more updates on stuff that we've covered in the past.
That's the best kind, yeah. Apart from environmental news.
And it gets me up to speed as well. So.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like the everyman of the podcast. It's like the blank slate.
I'm a vehicle through which listeners will understand things.
David's actually a character that Sam has created. He felt like we needed an extra voice on the pod.
And that's why we're not speaking at the same time. It's nothing to do with microphones at all.
No, it's Sam's second personality. It's been a difficult year for me, listeners. It really has.
And me. Bloody hell. So, any more on those ones at all?
No, that's it. We can move straight on.
Fantastic. So you're going to be telling us a lovely little story today,
I have. So yeah, like I said, I've read a book, made notes on the book as I read it, and I'm going to retell the story of the book to Sam and David. So to give you a bit of a background, Project Nemesis came out in 2012, the first part of a 5-book series, all with project in the title. So
amazing.
We may come back to this if this goes well. Written by Jeremy Robinson. He's had a few successful stories. He wrote the Chess Team series, which was quite popular.
Chess Team.
Chess.
It's like bodybuilders in a team.
But he also wrote a Godzilla graphic novel, so he's into his
right up your street.
Yeah, he's definitely into his like kaiju stuff.
Okay.
And Nemesis was actually I'll say that at the end. Because it'll be more interesting at the end.
Lovely. Well, make sure you remember to tell us, Lewis.
Yeah, so a bit of get into this book. I'm going to say the structure because I'm going to read through it. It's written from like point of view characters. There's one main character, and then there's a few side characters that get point of view chapters, kind of develop the story. Most of each chapter is just each character, sometimes it'll be like 4 chapters in a row that's just one character in one like scenario, and I don't know why they're 4 different chapters, but hey,
I guess it breaks it up a bit, doesn't it?
yeah. There's also way more like pop culture references in this book than I was like expecting. Like,
Okay.
I'm not sure if it's the writer or the main character who makes all these pop culture references, but like it's non-stop. It's quite funny. I've written some down, so I might give you
Are they
some.
like particularly dated? When did this book come out?
2012,
2012,
so
right.
yeah, pretty up to date.
I'm
but-
guessing the author grew up in the 1980s then.
Well, I think he's like 47, so yeah, he would have been a kid in the
I think
80s.
that's right, yeah.
Yeah.
It's not like what's that one with all the 80s references?
Ready
on it?
Player-
Ready Player
Yeah,
One.
not
That
quite
that
that.
was like through the roof. though.
Yeah, it's just
It was
literally every word.
unbearable. He was just showing off how much he grew up in the 80s.
I never read it, but I watched the film, and yeah, I got the gist of it. I think.
Yeah. So should we go straight into it? It's
Yeah, so as playing the role of one of your vacuous listeners, maybe that's not the right word, vacuous.
Wow.
One of your neutral listeners.
yeah.
Can I ask questions?
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Fantastic.
So I'll talk through this, but if either of you want to ask a question, crack a joke, or have an input, feel free.
Knock knock.
No.
No.
Because I don't want to just sit here and talk for an hour with you just sitting back on that sofa. Just,
Yeah. I mean, I'm
listening.
happy to. I'll
I
just lean
mean,
back.
yeah, maybe if that works, I'll get a job in like reading children's stories and stuff.
Is this a children's story?
No, very much not.
Is it very adult?
It's not like sexually.
For fuck's sake! I thought it was gonna be. Thought it was like 50 Shades of Grey.
No,
Like
there is
horror theme.
there is a few detailed descriptions of women.
Really?
Like
have you got a little bit of that in there?
I can't remember. I think I was a bit like, this is a bit weird.
When it gets to the women that are being described, maybe you can give us a from memory kind of. Is it about like large bosoms and that sort of thing?
yes,
Or thunders.
Her bunda was gigantic.
firm breasts and things like that.
heaving breast. Her breasts heaved breastily. That sort of thing.
Yeah,
Very like I am a man writing about women kind of thing. Yeah.
yeah, but it's not overly done. I couldn't help but notice.
Okay.
So it starts with a prologue because why
That's
not?
a good place for a prologue to be. Isn't it?
Yeah, it's 5 years ago, which I always find funny when they do that because we don't know what that's compared to. And it starts this story. You've got an American soldier called Lenny and a Japanese soldier called Katsu Endo, and they're on a training
I
mission.
thought it was going to be Carl then.
It's a Japanese-American like co-op training mission, and they have to like hide out in a mountain. And
Is it just 2 guys?
2 guys and like, a load of people hunting them, but they're like the best.
Cool. Okay.
Is,
Cool.
is this set in modern day?
Yes, and this is specifically is in Alaska, so in like the cold mountains and stuff.
Ooh.
But anyway, as they kind of it's been like days of them like sneaking around and hiding.
So these 2 have got to know each other quite well. Then.
Yeah, and I think the American guy is a little bit racist.
Okay.
The Japanese guy is called Katsu Endo, and he only ever calls him Ketchup. And it's like, okay, you're meant
Just
to not
wrong.
like this guy.
Not like katsu curry, like the most obvious.
No, but anyway, as they're hiding, one of them like falls into a hole, and it's like a cavern, and they go in there, and it's like a 50-foot tall cavern that clearly nobody's been in for a very long time. And as they kind of looking around, finding their torch, in the middle of this cavern is like a huge 30-foot object, and they don't know what it is. And then as they shine the torch, they realize it's got a huge eye socket
Oh god.
Oh my god.
on the side of this 30-foot object.
Is there anything in the eye socket?
No, it's just empty. It's
Just
like a
an eye?
skull.
Oh.
No eye then.
They describe it, it's so big a Humvee could drive through it.
Okay, like a Hummer, yeah.
Yeah. And anyway, like they kind of get to the end of the week and the mission's done, and they tell the General Gordon, this is, who is a character that comes back up.
So the commissioner's got a bit of a pay rise since Batman.
General Lance Gordon, and yeah. And anyway, they're like, hey, we found something cool. Come look at this. And the 3 of them are in this cave, and Gordon's suddenly like, right, Wilson, Endo, you work for me now. We're gonna be here.
Did they not work for him already? But like
They're
independently.
just trying to take credit for their findings.
I think partly.
But he's like, now you're directly under me.
Yeah.
kind of thing. Hopefully not in a sexual way.
But yeah, he's like, we're going to be here for a few years, so like, tuck her up, and we'll.
And so begins a year-long sex scene.
But Wilson's like, I've got like a family, like I don't want to just be here in Alaska in the middle of nowhere for 3 years. So Gordon gives Endo a gun and points at Wilson, and Endo shoots Wilson in the back of the head. And that's the end of the prologue.
Talk about human rights. Jesus.
Talk about human rights. That is an intense thing to do. So he's like, I don't want to leave, and I'm being forced, leave my family.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm not going to kill this guy, but this Japanese guy can do it for me.
Yeah.
I guess, as the vacuous listener, I guess it sounds that he didn't want the information getting out.
Yeah, I think that's probably a fair assessment.
Because otherwise you just let him go home and really wouldn't kill him.
Yeah.
Oh wait, hang on. So I thought the racist guy gave a gun to the Japanese guy and he killed the general. No, the other
No.
Okay, yeah. See, thank you for bringing that up.
General Gordon gave the gun to Endo.
Yeah.
Who then shot the American guy.
I see. So he was going to refuse it. And then he was still going to know.
Whereas
about
like Endo's clearly more willing
see.
To stay there and work for Gordon.
Yes, I see.
We then get prologue 2. Yeah. Yep. This is set 2 weeks ago. And it's a little girl called Meigo Tilly. It's Japanese name, Maigo. And she's got home to her house in Boston where she lives with her parents. Very nice house. And as she gets into the kitchen, she sees her mum dead on the floor, her head like exploded.
Wow.
And then she looks up and her dad is standing over her mum with a gun in his hand.
Oh my God.
And holding like surgical gloves. And she's like, obviously in shock. And she's like, oh my God, you've killed mum. And he's like, no, it was suicide. It was suicide, Meigo. And then he like, points the gun at his daughter and was like, it's suicide, was it? And she's just crying. And then he shoots his daughter as well.
I wonder if that was Katsu.
I mean, it's a Japanese guy, Japanese name.
Well, the mum was Japanese.
Okay.
Was it Wilson? Is Wilson the general?
No, the father was Alexander Tilly, a character who's
Tilly,
new.
right, yeah.
So that's our 2 prologues out the way. At first I was like, this is a bit random. Don't worry, they both come back into play.
Yeah, that's what we like. Yeah.
So those characters are relevant. But yeah, we get into the actual story and we're introduced to this guy called John Hudson, who's our main character.
Strong American name.
Yeah, John Hudson, can't go wrong. He works for a 3-person department as part of the Department of Homeland Security.
Okay.
American agency. And their subgroup is the Fusion Center Paranormal.
Okay, so it's going to get a bit spooky
So
then.
that's why it's only a 3-person team.
It's a bit like the X-Files kind of thing.
Yeah, but like he's investigating like a Sasquatch spotting. He thinks like the whole...
Just like X-Files then, yeah.
Yeah, he thinks like the whole thing's a bit of a joke. And
Just like X-Files
and
then.
he's like, this is dumb. Anyway, he's in the middle of Maine looking for this Sasquatch. He's been told to stay at this cabin and then a bear attacks him out of nowhere.
Oh God.
We get introduced to that character.
Cool.
Then introduced to another character called Dr. Kendra Elliott. She's a researcher at a secret laboratory called BioLance, working on gene splicing, working on like tissue regeneration, cancer cures, some of that, but it's all very secretive. Her specialism is Project Rapid Organ Growth. So quickly growing stuff for like heart transplants and things.
Has that got anything to do with like chinos or anything then?
Chinos?
Yeah, genes splicing.
Boo.
Another cracking joke cracked by
So
Sam.
you said I could crack jokes. Didn't say they had to be good ones.
Yeah. But she says BioLance has got 2 roles: don't endanger the public and don't reveal anything to the public.
There we go. So I imagine at least one of those is going to be gone in the next couple of chapters.
Basically, her backstory is that like, her dad was always disappointed that she was a girl. She had quite an abusive relationship with her dad and then killed him.
Wow.
And instead of going to prison, a certain General Gordon found out about it and recruited her to work in his lab.
Okay.
And she's been trying to grow human body parts, but it's really hard because that's not an easy thing to do, and they all fail. And then towards the end, Gordon and Endo, the Japanese guy from before, say they found a vial of something. Gordon says it's DNA, and it basically says, use this on your body growth stuff. You've got 2 days to grow a heart.
So is this them finding the vial from the Alaska place?
Quite possibly. I couldn't possibly say.
Got something from that eye socket then, eh? A little bit of eye
Maybe.
juice. They put it in a little vial.
That's where my mind has gone.
That sounds pretty vile to me.
One thing that Dr. Elliot notes is that Endo is like fiercely loyal to Gordon, like unbelievably loyal.
Seems like it, yeah. Pretty cool, yeah.
He was told just to kill someone and he did. I mean, that is loyalty.
Yeah.
So we're back with John, who's been attacked by a bear.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that guy.
And he's literally like got to this cabin, and like just as he's unlocked the door, this bear's come and got him.
It sounds almost like comical, like la la la.
Yeah, and he like the bear kind of goes inside like over him. He runs to like his truck.
The bear's trying to get inside. Is this a modern retelling of the Three Bears?
Just wait.
No fucking way.
Do they specify what kind of bear?
It's a black bear.
Okay,
Oh, so not,
that's like the easiest one to manage.
It's
isn't
still
it?
a bear though.
Is that what you do for work? He's a bear manager.
They're like giant cats, basically, like domesticated cats.
But anyway, like there's this bit of this action scene. He jumps into like the back of his truck. He realizes he's dropped the keys, can't get into his truck that's got a gun in it. The bear's kind of like trying to get on the truck. He sees the keys in the door, makes like a run for it, gets in the house, and it's got like one of those like wooden planks that locks the door.
Oh yeah,
that falls behind him. So he's like, "Fuck, I'm safe in the cabin." And then he turns around, and in the corner of like the living room is 2 bear cubs. And like the back door's open, so they've been using it as like a little cave.
Right.
Out
the
of
bear's
frying
banging
pan into the fire.
Exactly. He sees the bear like going around the cabin, so he grabs his keys, goes back out the front, gets into the truck, grabs his gun, and as the bear kind of approaches, he shoots up into the air and scares the bear
That's a
away.
good move for a black bear, I think.
And then he grabs a load of beers out of the truck and goes and sits in the cabin.
This is a good. I like this guy. I've got good vibes from him.
And whilst he's walking back to the hut with his beers, he was like, "Cool, that would have been easy if I was Chuck Norris."
Okay,
so that's the first.
If I was Chuck Norris.
And then he also, when he's being attacked by the bear, he gets into the truck to like get the gun, and the bear like slams into the door, like smashing it. And he was like, for a second, I thought I was Captain Marvel, but I don't recall saying Shazam.
What?
Just pop culture references everywhere.
Yeah, quite. I think it's specifically this guy.
Character, right? Okay.
But then we're back with Dr. Elliot, and she's like fallen asleep in the lab, and General Gordon's woken her up, and he's like staring behind her. She's like terrified of Endo. She constantly thinks Endo's about to kill her.
Yeah, well,
because
that seems fair enough.
Also, like she should be in prison if Gordon. So like nobody would notice if she died.
She's
sort
kind
of
of like almost black. Like it's a saving grace, but it's also a bit like blackmaily that she's got to do whatever they say, kind of thing.
But she sounds like she has a very interesting backstory though. Because it could have been self-defense that she killed her
I think
father.
it very much was, but you know, it's hard to prove that.
It sounds familiar to a situation we heard earlier on in the book, to be perfectly honest. But it's not for me to say, really, is it?
But anyway, she's added that vial to her growth hormone thing. So what she kind of does is like grow a fetus until it gets to the point. And she'd fallen asleep at like 4:30. And then been woken up at like 5:30, and this fetus had grown to like 28 weeks worth of growth in an hour.
Ooh,
and then she
good.
starts like extrapolating the maths and stuff, and realizes it could be like a fully grown woman in 42 hours.
Wow.
And they're like, cool, this worked. So obviously Gordon's quite excited by this because that's his whole thing. And he's like, why is this a woman? Oh, I didn't want a woman.
Why So he's sexist. This guy, basically.
Yeah. But she said she picked DNA from the strongest candidate that they had. Somebody who had the strongest heart. It was some Japanese girl called Meigo. Yeah.
So the intrigue begins.
Yep. So they're like,
I'm intrigued. Colour me intrigued.
Like, she died last week, and like her dad's a suspect, but we don't know any more than
It
that.
was 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, you're right. Maybe I typed that wrong.
She died but weeks ago.
But it kind of concludes with him being like, if this works, you'll never have to look out for Endo again. If it doesn't work, I wouldn't look over your shoulder again because it'll be easier that way.
Okay.
So it's basically like, if this is successful, you're all good. If it's bad, you're dead.
That's what they always say, though, isn't it? You know, managers.
I mean, has that ever really helped someone work more efficiently? Probably not.
It's like extreme micromanaging, isn't it? Macro-managing, you could say.
And she's working like on her own on this as well, so it's quite a stressful situation. And then John, we're back with John, and he's woken up very early, a huge headache, also in agony.
Is this bear guy?
Yeah. So obviously he's hungover. He's had a fight with a bear. He's feeling rough, and there's a really loud bang on the door, and he's like, "Oh, I don't want to go." Goes down there, and it's like the police, and he's like, opens the door and goes, holy, and it's a very, very attractive policewoman.
Okay, so
Curves in all the right places.
Bazumbas, jumbers, unders.
Maybe not that explicit, but
No.
you get
But
the
does
idea.
it say like she's a curvy motherfucker?
Yeah, and that very beautiful
and he kind
eye.
of does a bit of an awooga kind of. doesn't
Pretty
he?
much.
David, do you want to give us a little?
Wawooga!
There we go.
Her name is Sheriff Collins. And she's like, neighbors were complaining that like late last night we heard somebody like singing in the forest, shooting their gun off. Like, what were you doing? And he was like, oh, I don't really remember. And then he remembers like singing Aerosmith and firing his gun in the middle of the woods in just his boxers.
Another pop culture reference there.
Yeah. He kind of explains who he is. He's from the DHS, the Department of Homeland Security.
Oh, yeah, I forgot who he was, to be honest.
And he's here looking for a Sasquatch. She's kind of like, you're taking the piss. She was like, actually, the next person I'm going to see is the guy who keeps calling about a Sasquatch. So like, just get in my car and come with me. I'm going there anyway.
Classic. Get the characters together.
Yep, pretty much. So she gives him like ibuprofen and a coffee for a hangover, and it just so happens to be his like favorite coffee choice. And he gets all suspicious. She's got very beautiful white teeth, and he's like, how the fuck did you know my coffee choice? You must know Ted Watson. And she does. Ted Watson's like one of the other 3 people in his department.
Right, okay.
And she's like, oh yeah, he gave me a call and told me to look out for you, basically. He knows what you're like. And then they go to see this guy, Mr. Johnson, who is just sitting on a rocking chair in front of his cabin.
And this is the Sasquatch spotter guy.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
He's clearly like ex-military. Like he's got like a Marines hat on and stuff. And John quite respects the military, so he's respectful of this man. He's also really good with accents. It makes quite a point of.
That's so specific.
Yeah,
as a character trait, though,
and like
isn't
he
it?
can tell Collins, the
Yeah,
policewoman,
sexy Collins.
isn't from Maine. He's
Okay.
like, "You're from Georgia, aren't you?" She's like, "Oh yeah," because she says like "spoles," like just one word. Like he's got a really good ear for accents.
Okay.
Anyway, he kind of warms Johnson up to him by like playing the part and
Is it
being
another
like,
sex scene coming
it's
up?
not another sex scene.
With his hands. He warms him up.
But he asked about the Sasquatch, and Mr. Johnson's like, look, I'm not saying it's a Sasquatch. I just keep seeing things moving through the woods, like around my cabin.
So
Like,
is Johnson one of the 3 members of the team?
no, he's just like a old retired guy living in the woods in a
Okay.
cabin. And he's like, I don't know what it is, but like there's something walking around here. So John and Collins are like, okay, we'll go investigate. You wait here. We'll go see what's going on. They're not totally believing, but they're like, we'll check it out for you. John's still really hungover because
Is he going to be hungover for this whole book, basically?
a lot of it, yeah. I mean, to be fair, a lot of it happens within like
That's
days.
what I'm thinking, yeah. And he's still hungover. It was that much beer.
As like they're walking through the woods, they kind of see some like footprints going through like a path, and they're like, "Huh, maybe like Johnson did see some people out here." And as they're walking through, they came across this big gate with a fallen tree like in front of it, and it's got a sign saying like U.S. Army restricted area, use of deadly force is authorized. Anything will be like confiscated. And they're like, John says there was this thing called Nike sites in the 50s that were like missile defense stuff set up by
Nothing
the things.
to do with like shoe companies.
No, but it's spelled the same.
Is it spelled the same? Wow,
Yeah.
okay, yeah.
He was like, it was set up like around big towns to like protect them from missiles. And this looks like one of them. She's like, okay, but it's like out of use. He's like, yeah, the thing is though, the kind of fences and the razors they use on the fence were like developed in the 90s. So it's like someone's pretending it's one of them. Also, they were by big towns and we're in the middle of nowhere.
So
like,
it's dressed up to look like something. So it's something, but it's dressed up to look like something else.
Precisely. And as they kind of look in them, suddenly Collins gets a shotgun into her back, like somebody pointing a gun into her back.
Oh, okay, she doesn't get shot.
No.
This beautiful, sexy woman is killed straight away.
Yeah.
No.
And this guy's like, what are you doing on my land? And John like clearly noticed he's wearing like the sort of stuff like Johnson is, but it's almost like a costume, like it's too
and
clean.
He doesn't have the right accent.
And he doesn't have a right accent. He's got a clear like Kansas accent. And at one point he's talking to them like, what are you doing here? He like scratches his face like 3 times, and both of them kind of twig that's a sign. Like he's signaling to other people. And they kind of like, oh yeah, we're looking for a Sasquatch. We think it's probably a bear. Have you seen a bear? Oh yeah, we've seen a bear. Or the guy's
Have you
like,
ever seen a bear?
The guy's like, oh yeah, I've seen a bear, and they kind of talk their way out of it. And he rubs his face then, which is they're like, oh, that's a sign that we can like go, I guess. And they kind of walk down, but they're both really suspicious. But they're like silently walking, and as they get back down, they're both like, well, he's clearly not from round here.
There's something going on there, right? Yeah.
She's twigged as well. Like she can tell these signs. As she could even see where 2 other guys were that he didn't notice.
So maybe there's a bit more to her than meets the eye.
Yeah, she's quite like impressive.
They've both got skills that match the overall issue that they're facing.
She's definitely got some skills based on that description you gave earlier. She's very impressive. That's the way she was.
Yeah. They start walking back towards Mr. Johnson, and they're like waving at him to like so he knows they're coming back, and he's just not moving. And as they get a bit closer, John notices he's got like a hole in his forehead. And he like pulls Collins like close into him, and he's like, he's like, don't say anything, but like Johnson's dead. We're gonna get killed any second now. He's like, I'm gonna throw you to my left. When I do, just run, and I'll run after you. And then he throws her to her left, like through a bush, and runs after. And then suddenly there's like bullets flying all over the place. And they're like, they just run, and they're like, they can see some people like shooting at them, but because it's like dense forest, they kind of just keep running and keep running keep running. They eventually get to like an opening where there's been like a landslide, and they quickly jump in and kind of hide under some tree roots. It's very much like in the Fellowship of the Ring when it's very much like that. And they kind of hear these 3 guys like standing above them. One of them is the Kansas guy. And then they pull down one of the roots, and a guy falls and like smashes his head in front of them. And then they jump at the other 2 guys and like shoot one of them, have a bit of a wrestle with the other one. Bit of a fighting scene, and John's quite impressed with how good Collins is at fighting. One of these guys is particularly big, and she manages to like knock him down.
Nice.
And they grab like his backpack and their guns. It's quite a dramatic action scene that goes on for a bit, but it's a bit hard to describe.
Would you say it goes on for a bit too long?
No, it's quite
it's
well
the first
placed.
kind of action back bit.
Yeah,
so far,
exactly.
Yeah.
But they knock all 3 guys down. They grab the backpack. He goes to get the guns, and they spot like 3 other guys like in the distance. They're like, we need to go. Like, we need to get out of here. We don't know how many people they are. They seem pretty well trained, and they've got like a secret base. So we need to get out of here.
And they've got secret signals as well. The most dangerous thing of all.
Yeah, secret face scratching signals and wrong accents. You got to watch out from those people from Kansas, I tell you that.
Well, they're not in Kansas anymore. We're back with Dr. Elliot, and she's like just been watching Mago grow. So she refers to the fetus as Mago because it took the DNA from Mago, the dead girl. And she's just been like watching, and her growth has doubled every 2 hours. She thinks she's now physically 18.
Oh, right. And she was never that
And it's been
old
like
before.
10 hours.
So
yeah,
the original one was like a kid, wasn't she?
Yeah, she's older than the kid ever got to.
Is she in like a tube, like a
Bacta type thing? Yeah, you can imagine. Yeah. Gordon comes in, is like amazed at all this, and they're both just like, "This is incredible." And then he spots something like just at the bottom of her back, like a weird like lump, and they kind of look at it, and it's like a small dark bump. So she puts in like a little camera needle thing to have a look at it, and it's like a bit scaly. And she tries to like stick a needle in it, and it just like it's rock hard. And she's like, "Okay, that's weird, but let's not worry about that."
Yeah.
It turns out that like Gordon is keen to grow this girl because he needs a heart transplant.
Right.
So he's like, and because she's now like 18 and growing really quick, he's like, she'll be ready in 2 hours. Get all this ready for heart surgery. We're gonna do it today.
So who's the heart surgery for?
For Gordon, General Gordon.
Oh, okay.
Surely he could get it from somewhere else.
As the vacuous listener,
Yeah.
Would the heart keep on aging though, even when it's in him?
That is a very good point.
That's the thing I'm intrigued about at the moment.
Well,
I suppose we'll find out soon.
It's a very good point. Call himself vacuous. He's actually the bloody smartest one out.
Yeah. She has like a close look at the lump and decides that it's not important. It's probably like some people have extended like coccyx and stuff.
Yes.
But trying to think. That's pretty. So, and Golden goes to the Endo and was like, "It's time." Turns out Endo and his men have been going out looking for these two people that were looking around the site recently.
So it's all connected.
Yeah, and Gordon's like, "Leave the rest of your men to go find them. Endo, you come back here."
So Endo's kind of like head of security of this place, pretty much.
Is that Katsu Endo?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. He's
Ketchup Endo. If you're using his racist nickname.
You're a stupid racist.
Yeah.
So Ketchup, what's he up to?
We're back with John and Collins. They've been like hiding for most of the day and sneaking around. They like double backed on themselves and threw off the trail. Basically, they're doing a really good job of hiding. The sun's starting to come down. So he's got like a blanket in his bag, and they find a ravine, and he quite skillfully like puts it up to like the side and covers it with sticks and leaves. So it's kind of
like a little shelter,
camouflage, but they can like go underneath very clever. Like keep, because there's a storm coming.
Sounds very cozy to me.
It does. Sounds quite romantic, actually. Yeah.
And they go to sleep there.
Oh, do they?
What do they do?
They sleep.
Is it this?
Okay.
John is knackered because like he had a few hours sleep, was hungover, and then he's been chased by these like.
I guess he's had 2 near-death experiences in 2 days.
Yeah,
and he's hungover as fuck.
Yeah, and this is a guy who works in the paranormal department. So he's like, my job is boring. All I do is go to random places in the country and
see nothing, basically.
Yeah. But we're back with Dr. Kendra, who's preparing Mago for surgery. And
so she's still like 18, 20 kind of.
Yeah, I think she may be like 20, 21 now. Okay. But she's continued growing. And I'm going to send you both a picture of what Mago currently looks like. And I'll get you to describe it. So this is, a couple of hours later, she's preparing her, and she's like, she has changed slightly. Still looks like a beautiful young Japanese girl.
Oh my gosh.
But there's some additions.
Else going on there.
That doesn't look human to me.
She's got. So, David, do you want to, as the
it kind of looks a bit like the Little Mermaid.
Yeah, I mean, in some ways,
but with a claw for feet.
I think she's got. I think it's 2 claws. It's
2 claws for feet and a kind of reptilian tail coming out.
It's almost like an alien tail, like from Alien.
Yeah.
Although, and that tube at the top is like the umbilical cord, I assume.
Yeah.
So she's got an umbilical cord coming down. She looks relatively peaceful, a little bit constipated.
I mean, everything except for the feet and tail looks
you're on board with.
absolutely normal.
Yeah?
Absolutely fine.
But yeah,
do you reckon hot, beautiful? Is that what you said? Beautiful Japanese?
they do
woman?
describe her as beautiful.
I mean, I'll keep this photo, definitely.
But
Lewis's fingers are in the bottom of the photo.
but yeah, she needs to. So she gets her out like the back to tank, lays her down on like a surgery bed, but covers up the bottom half with like sheets so the
Very
surgeons
nice.
don't see.
So that she doesn't end up dying, basically. Because she was given the threat, wasn't she? She would either die
Yeah,
if she fucked it up.
Oh, and also what? So they don't see the shit. Yeah.
Yeah,
I thought it was
pretty
so that to protect her dignity. I think so.
Oh no, they do not care about her dignity. So they take her to the surgeon room, and General Gordon doesn't want to wait for the anesthetic until he's seen that the heart is like healthy. He's like, I don't want to go under unless I know for sure. And the surgeons are really roughly cutting open Mago's chest, like not really taking care, like ripping her ribs out.
Ouch.
And because to them, they get told that she's like brain
Just
dead.
like a blank person.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like a vacuous listener.
Yeah.
And
Like
like
one of you people listening.
wow. And her like
so rude.
her brain signals are just like nothing, so they don't
Just
really
like
mind.
our vacuous listeners.
And they pull the heart out and it's healthy.
Yeah.
And Gordon like smiles genuinely at Elliot, and she's like, "This is the first time he's ever really done that."
Wow.
And
That's
turns to
conditional love, that is.
Yes,
That's
Yeah.
disgusting.
She's got the father figure that she always wanted.
and he turns to Endom and just says, "She's okay." And then like gets put under. The surgeons tell Kendra Dr. Elliot, that she can like take the body out to the morgue, take it out to the morgue, and Endo is like holds the door open for her, and he's like, "Thank you for doing this. The general's a good friend of mine." And she's like, "Huh." Endo's literally never spoken to me, and now he's always just been the scary guy in the corner of the garden, and now he's being like quite
So
genuine.
is she kind of questioning her kind of opinions a little bit, or is she just like
A bit.
This is important kind of thing? Like,
Yeah.
I've done something for these guys.
But she gets to the morgue. So on her way, she's kind of really sad about it. She's like, this is somebody that I kind of brought up from a fetus.
Yeah, almost like a daughter kind of.
Yeah,
thing,
and even though it's been like a day,
Mm.
I've still seen this woman grow into a full-grown woman, and she starts thinking like this was like a real girl who never lived this long. Like she could have been this woman, and her life was cut short. So she takes her to the morgue, and the sheet like catches on the door as she goes in. She's doing it by herself, and Elliot's a bit shocked. She moved back and's kind of like, "What the fuck?" Where she's been cut open on her chest has now like fully covered over in black scales.
Oh.
So it's just kind of healed itself. And as she's looking closer, her eyes open. And she's like terrified. And then the last thing she sees is the tail rising and coming towards her.
My.
Yes.
If you go a bit further back in the story, obviously she's testing. She's like trying to find rapidly growing organs, right?
Yeah, she
So I
was.
suppose maybe once one organ is taken out, it is then back in no time, but obviously in a slightly different way.
Yeah, pretty much.
And that sounds very alien-like as well, doesn't it? The tail,
Yeah.
tail. Is that a Kansas accent there?
I
Tail.
have no
Or
idea.
Probably more Georgia.
Yeah,
Listeners, let us know.
Kansas is kind of like this, ma'am.
And what's Georgia then?
Georgia? Oh, I couldn't tell you.
That actually sounds slightly right.
I do kind of believe that.
And that's another reason why David's on this episode.
But we get to John and Collins, and they've kind of woken up. They've kind of planned out in a map where they are and where the secret base is. And as they kind of preparing to go, they can just smell smoke.
Sorry, who's this? This is Kathleen. What's her name?
Collins.
This is like
Collins.
big titty cop woman and Mulder from the X-Files.
John and Collins.
Joan Collins.
Joan Collins.
That's a reference that I don't even really get, to be honest.
There's so much smoke they're having to like cover their faces, but they can't see a fire or anything. But they head towards the Nike site as they know it. And as they go in there, they can start smelling blood. Yeah. And then they come across like a military boot. And as they go close to it, the foot is still inside it.
Yeah.
And they're like, no way could a bear have done this. Like, something else has happened here.
Roger, do you know what? Nike do make very good footwear. So it's no surprise that is the one surviving.
And that survived, yeah. I was going to say it was a smoking bear. You know, a bear couldn't do it, but a bear that's smoking.
And that
untold potential, really.
That concludes stage 1.
Woo!
Stage 2 is them. They come up to the kind of outer fence, and they see part of it's been knocked down by like a tree, and they find some like really thick black flesh on the fencing, and they kind of get it in like a doggy bag, and they're like, this is really weird.
They're gonna eat it later then.
Maybe. Whilst John finds that, Collins finds like a big claw scratch on a tree, and she's like, he describes it as being twice as wide as his hand.
Okay, yeah.
So like a pretty big claw, and he's like,
big hand, yeah.
Bears don't have like claws long enough to do this. And then suddenly a tree falls like near them. And they see something in the shadows, can't really tell what it is, and they just leg it for like through the gap in the fence and towards like the building inside this Nike site. And John looks behind and he just sees like a head in the distance with huge orange glowing bits coming down the side of it.
Wow.
Massive floating head.
Orange,
maybe
like stripes down the sides,
like dots, big like pulsating dots. They get inside the first building they see, and there is corpses everywhere.
Oh my!
Everywhere
God.
they look. And then we get a point of view from another character, Mago.
Oh.
She is very confused, doesn't really know what's going on. She just has like an ongoing hunger. She's just really hungry. It's all she can think about. Hunt, kill, feast, repeat. And hunger and hatred.
Wow.
It's all she could find. She said when she couldn't find any more prey, she headed into the woods, found a man fleeing, and then came across like a man and a woman and pushed a tree at them. But then they got into the building that I've just escaped from, kind of thing. But she's very confused. She just needs to eat, basically.
I guess all that kind of evolving and growing is a hungry task.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
And she heads into the building where this man and the woman have gone, and she notices that like she could walk down this corridor easily when she left, and now it's a bit tight. Like she's scraping across the ceiling.
She's still growing.
She's still growing. As she follows them down, she comes across a dead woman who's familiar to her and only partly eaten.
That's sad.
And she remembers talking to this woman in a language she doesn't recognize.
Oh, okay.
And then there's also a load of blood smearings on the wall, but it's not.
Okay.
She can't read them. She doesn't understand what it is, but she can kind of tell their words.
Okay.
But then all she can think about is a hunger, and she's lost the man and the woman. And she leaves the building, and then she's got like an urge to go south. She's like, "I'll go south. Just need to go
She's
south."
just running on instincts then. At the
Yeah,
moment,
pretty
really.
much. She's very confused and just like, I'm hungry, I'm angry, and I need to go south. I just do it.
Wow.
And not really
Animal
understanding.
instinct, yeah.
John and Collins have hidden in a drawer in the morgue.
Okay. I was going to say, how small is this drawer? How big is this drawer? So one thing is growing and they're shrinking. It's like a Gulliver's Travels kind of situation.
They're right. And then they think back to this monster they'd seen. They describe it as 15 feet tall whilst it was on all fours.
Okay.
Like rough skin, like armor, glowing orange membranes lining the side of its neck and ribs. I've got another picture here I can
I was
send
literally about to
you.
say, I can't wait for the next photo.
You can kind of see the development from the last image of Mago. But yeah, it's kind of as I described. Anything that stand out to you?
It looks a bit like a xenomorph.
It looks like a mixture between, like a slightly more lizardy kind of, almost like what is it called? Zilla from the American remake of Godzilla.
Yeah, I can see that.
But with it's xenomorph, but then like a slightly humanish face.
One thing that stands out to them is that it's got like a somehow feminine face and human looking eyes.
Yeah, I can see that. And we can see those kind of weird nodules down the side of the neck.
Yeah, so it's like all black and those bits are like glowing orange.
It's very spiky down the back as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
Dangerously long claws as well. I mean, that could really do some damage.
They kind of conclude this could only be like an alien.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I would say. As well.
They come across the writing on the wall and it's clearly in blood, but there's so much blood it couldn't be like one person's blood that they wrote on the wall themselves.
Right.
And they take some pictures but can't quite figure out what it says. There's one word at the top that they can kind of make out, which is written in the book that I'll send to you to see if you can figure out what it says. They think it's maybe like Greek lettering, because it's like bloody and like smeared. It's kind of hard to figure out what it is. So I've just sent you a picture of that as it's shown in the book. So they can't really tell what it is, and that's their best like estimation of what it says. Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, neurons, neurosis.
But anyway, John then calls Ted Watson, like one of the other people in the ditch.
The one who knew his coffee order, right?
Yeah. And he's like, there's loads of dead here. He kind of goes through the whole story. He sends him a picture of the writing. And he's like, this needs to go to like the higher ups in the DHS. Like, this is thousands of people could be affected by this. Like,
so very quickly, Ted is the second member of this 3-person gang.
Yeah.
And we haven't met the third yet.
We haven't.
That we know of anyway.
Yeah, that we know of. But John's like,
the bear.
John's like, we need the state police, we need the National Guard, we need like a SWAT team, everyone on standby. Like, this is big. And he requests like a satellite view and says, like, Ted's like, you know, they're not going to take us seriously. He's like, report it as a biological terror threat. Right, so they can't ignore that, and it's not entirely inaccurate. Ted's like, yeah, I'll try. And John says, you and I both know there is no try. And Ted says, there is only do.
Is that a Yoda thing?
That is a Yoda thing.
Wow. Another reference there.
Yeah. And then they go up to the roof to see if they can get a view of it. And then suddenly they hear somebody say, put your hands on your head and turn around slowly. And John recognizes the accent as being Japanese.
So it's a very convenient plot device.
It really is, and it comes up. So any ideas who that could be?
Is it
Mr. Katsu Enzo?
Oh, almost. Endo.
Endo.
And John basically tells them that we were looking for a Sasquatch. Endo says, like, look, we're a bioengineering facility. We're trying to save the general. Like, this creature appeared. He hid in a room. And
yeah, because they've got no idea that it could have come from the body that they took.
Yeah,
well, they didn't see it kind of happen in the same way that
Endo has an idea because he knew it had like the tail and the talons, like the claws.
Oh, did he see that bit?
Yes, he's always with General Gordon.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
And he's like, look, okay, I won't kill you, but I need your help. The general is like desperately dying. I need you to come help me get him to a hospital. And they're like, okay, we'll do it. Partly because he's pointing a gun at them. They go down to him and the general's just like standing in the corner. He's just had heart surgery and his chest is literally dripping. And Endo's like, what are you doing? And he's like, I've brought these people. They're the 2 people from the woods. They're going to help you. And then the general's just like, I can feel her. Kill them. Very dramatically. Wow. Endo's like, I can't because they've also got guns. Like, he's like, I don't want to shoot out. And the general just kind of walks up to John, chest dripping, and then just like jumps at him. There's a bit of an action scene with him like pommeling John. Collins jumps in. Endo like jumps to the back and starts shooting, but they're behind a cover as well. John and Collins manage to like make it out the door and run. They blockade a door and like go up some stairs, and John kind of hangs around and hears Endo banging, and then the door just kind of flies off, and this man topless with his chest dripping just bursts through.
Wow.
And he's like, okay, so he's strong.
Yeah.
Before they'd asked Ted Watson to get them a helicopter to get them out of here. Now as they make it to a roof, a bright red helicopter appears. But they're being chased by General Gordon. So they run and jump for the helicopter, clinging onto the side.
Dramatic.
And they're slowly like slipping. And then John slips, but fortunately he's only like 7 foot off the ground. And he like lands on his feet and he's like, wow, this pilot's good. I didn't even notice that we were going down. They get in the helicopter and kind of go off. And John realized the pilot's just some civilian. It's a guy called Rich Woodall. His friends call him Woodstock, and he's got like a grey ponytail. He's a former military guy, but like he's got this helicopter with a machine gun in the back, and he does like tours for like old like vets who want to experience shooting
like,
stuff again.
Cool. That's gonna be handy, I guess. Then.
Yeah, they spend a lot of time with this helicopter, to be fair. And John's like, look out for like any fallen trees, and goes that way.
Yeah.
He calls Ted again, who's identified the guy from Kansas,
right?
Because they described him. I think they got a picture of him at some point. And he says his former army retired about 5 years ago. And they conclude that like the General Gordon was recruiting old soldiers to leave the army and come join him.
Yeah.
And he's like, General Gordon's hostile. Look up Endo and Mago. And he's like, do you have any more info? He's like, no, just those two names. And they're like, okay, I'll look him up. And when Gordon was in the room, when he said he could feel her, he looked at the wall that was like south.
Right.
So John's like, we have no idea where to go, but maybe go south, go that way.
These guys are good.
And that was also where Mago said that they were going as well. Felt they were going south or something.
Yeah.
An instinctual pull of the southern hemisphere.
Migrating.
We quickly get introduced to two like teenagers, like late teens, early 20s, who are going to go like bang in the woods, essentially.
Nice.
She's described as like having hips that no guy could turn down.
There we go.
And then suddenly out of nowhere, something attacks them. She turns and this guy's like just legs, like the top half of his body's just gone.
Just legs.
And she runs, gets to like her truck and like has a shotgun, sees this creature coming out of the woods, again noting that it's got a feminine face, shoots at the creature, hears like a scream of pain, and then there's a sudden explosion of heat and light all over her. And all that's left is a charred husk.
Hey. A wet husk.
a very dry husk.
I say.
And a melted shotgun.
Right.
So something's set off.
So it did some sort of attack on her.
Yeah. In the helicopter, so it's John, Collins, and Woodstock. And they can't see anything in the woods. It's dense forest. And they figured out like they've got some background on Gordon from what's said. He works for a tech company called Zoom. Zoom with a B on the end.
Zoom.
Yeah.
Obviously, this was 2012.
Yeah. Pre-Zoom.
Apparently, they were like a startup a few years ago, and now they're like competing with Google.
Oh, okay. Who's Gordon again? The general guy.
General, yeah. He works for them now. And they're a search engine, but they've also got like they're into biotech and all other sorts of different
so it's
things.
A bit of a kind of Elon Musk Tesla kind of situation.
Yeah, and they find out that this Nike site where the lab was owned by Zoom.
Of course.
But they figure out the writing that they saw on the wall, the one that I sent you a picture of, spelled out Nemesis.
Yes.
That's the name of the book.
Of course.
Yes, it is.
Of course. Do you like how vacuous we were that whole time?
As in the helicopter, they see a person standing next to a truck, and they're like, that person's in danger. And they go down there. They fight. They work their way down, and they see this half-melted shotgun being held by a charred body, and they're like, oh shit.
Oh shit.
And they're like, then John kind of figures out where they are and draws a line from the lab and tries and figure out what's in that direction. And just a bit south is a town called Portland, 60,000 residents.
Oh no.
And then he hears like the ground wobbling and he's like, oh shit, we need to get out of here. They run, the monster's running like in the woods, they can hear it next to it, and they get back to like the helicopter with Woodstock in it, and they're just like, you need to get out of here.
Go.
So they think the monster's going for the helicopter. The helicopter gets away just enough and then kind of sees that they're there and leads the monster away by kind of staying just low enough so the monster thinks it can grab it.
So is it just Woodstock in the helicopter now?
Yeah, just Woodstock, and he's a very good pilot.
But with them?
No, they're back. They didn't make it back. So they're like, so go without us.
They're like calling to him, like, go.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
He kind of signaled, like, make a loop round. They climb up a tree, and jump into the helicopter when it comes back round.
That's cool.
It takes a while for them to climb this tree.
Really? And then they put their left arm up and then their right arms. They're very synchronized tree climbers.
Yeah, but then the monster is there, so they start shooting at the monster, but it's not really doing much. So then they hit it in one of these orange glowing bits.
Oh yeah.
And it kind of screams at pain, and then a fireball like comes at them and nearly knocks the helicopter out. But the kind of shockwave of the scream of pain has knocked them out the way already. And Woodstock's like, this helicopter's like fucked. I need to land it somewhere. And Collins is like, right, the police station is not far from here. I've got a car. We'll go there.
Yeah, because she's a police officer, right?
Yeah. And we get a quick scene of the mayor of Portland, who's a bit of a scumbag. The whole reason he became a mayor was to like buy properties cheap from people that were desperate.
Classic. Yeah.
And there's a big parade going on in this town, and then suddenly everyone's screaming, and this huge creature has appeared. The mayor gets eaten. But he's not dead, and he like falls down into this big stomach, and this woman's like, I've been here for like, hours, as she's like slowly dying, and he's like, oh. So John and Collins get to this town. They've been driving super fast. Collins is a very good driver.
Yeah,
she can go very fast.
She's good at lots of things, it seems like.
She's the perfect woman.
Skilled, yes.
But they see like destroyed cars. There's hundreds of bodies like everywhere.
Wow, this has escalated really quickly, hasn't it?
Yeah.
So is the creature behind them at the moment?
No,
or in
so
front of them?
the creature.
Oh, of course, it's gone to the town now.
It's gone to the town.
It's big enough to have eaten something and eaten someone and then be inside it.
Yeah.
Right.
So it just keeps growing. Last time we saw it, they described it as 15 feet when it was on all fours. So it's like 30 feet tall at this point. Well, the last time they saw it. Collins and John have had a bit of an argument because he asked about her history. And she's like, I don't want to talk about it.
Okay, she's got a secret past.
But as they go into this town, there's like everything destroyed. And John sees like this scared girl. And he's like, fuck it, I'm going to get her. Grabs this girl, goes to get back to the car. And Collins is just gone. And he's like, oh, fuck, I should have pissed her off. He's carrying this girl and like runs to town. And then suddenly Collins comes back in the car. And they get in the car, and the creature is like chasing them suddenly out of nowhere, and they're like, "Oh my god, this thing huge." They find like a hidden little.
This is the first time they've seen it for a bit of time now.
Yeah,
so they're probably pretty shocked.
Yeah, and they shocked that it's so big. They managed to get away from it a bit, and there's this guy who's got like a bomb shelter they're hiding in. And he calls
a bomb shelter.
A bomb shelter.
Oh, he's gonna be like one of the crazy people from like War of the Worlds. Do you remember that?
Yeah, but you know, perfect for these kind of situations.
Yeah, perfect.
He calls Ted Watson again, and John's like, Ashford, this town is destroyed. Like, this is ridiculous. Just at that point,
This is ridiculous.
just at that point, Woodstock arrives with his helicopter that he's fixed whilst they were driving to the town, and is like, right,
Good old Woodstock.
get in. And then we hear from General Gordon.
Oh, is he called them up? Then?
Evil Gordy.
No, we got a point of view from him.
Perspective, the one with the new hearts,
Yes.
fresh heart.
And he's saying that he's never felt so good.
Yeah.
He's got more of a purpose than
What's
ever
happening?
before. And he's kind of like, is this how I used to feel, or did I like always have a bad heart? It's like, oh, maybe I'm better than everyone else.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like he's got a bit of a complex anyway.
Yeah. Anyway, he's in a car with Endo, who's driving him to the Zoom headquarters in
I
Boston.
thought you were gonna say to the zoo.
And Gordon, he's not sure why, but like he needs to access the computers, and he wants to find out more about the creature they found in Alaska, and who they extracted DNA from.
Hey.
So we do notice that. As they get to these headquarters, they see that the FBI are outside, because obviously John's been like, hey, look out for these guys, shit's going on. And they drive by and as they drive by, like, Gordon does his window down and just kind of looks out, knowing that they can see him. And they drive up into the car park and park up, and these 4 FBI agents come, like, they're getting closer and closer to this car, and out of nowhere,
Stand a chance.
a door flies open, breaks this guy's leg,
Ow.
and Gordon jumps out and punches him in the chest, and his chest literally like collapses in on itself. Meanwhile, Endo's in like the corner of the car park hiding. He's just like shot 2 of them, and then there's one more, the guy who's like got a broken leg, on the floor. And Gordon's like, tell me, like, who sent you? And he's like, I've got a wife and kids.
He's like, I don't give a fuck.
That wasn't the
about...
question.
Yeah,
we know he doesn't give a fuck about that because he killed that guy in the first bit.
it's like, who sent them? The agent says it was DHS Fusion Paranormal, or just Fusion P, they know him as. And they're like, okay.
Does Gordon look? Does he look totally normal at this point?
At this point, yeah, but he's like really strong and like intense.
superpowered.
Yeah. So there's. Where are we now? Oh yeah, so we're back. We're now with Ted Watson. Yeah, who's the other guy?
The coffee guy.
Coffee man.
Yeah.
Coffee boy.
Shit about coffee.
And he's got like loads, like hundreds of men. They've kind of set up this defense at this town because they're preparing for this monster. And we meet this guy called Rod Cugliari.
Strong American name there again.
I mean, Rod, Cugliari.
It's an Italian name. It's probably Italian American, isn't he?
Rod Cugliari.
But anyway, he is the head of the Fusion Center Boston.
Right.
It's like a sister thing to them.
Yeah.
And the 3 people in the paranormal one are like, everyone looks down at us because we're paranormal. And Ted is with Woodstock and Collins.
Right. So most of the characters are together. It's just
John's elsewhere.
Oh, John's not there.
No.
Right.
Yeah, John is with the little girl at the moment.
Yeah, but I thought they.
No, they picked up. He's gone off.
Gone somewhere else.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And Cugliari's like really pissed off to see Ted Watson, and he comes over and is like, "What the fuck is this? Like, what's going on? This is the largest mobilization of military and emergency services since 9/11, and it's because of like you fucking paranormal twats." But then Cugliari's also like, "I'm in charge." Even though they have like the same rank, he's like, I'm in charge. I've got most of these people are mine. Watson's like, no, this is a paranormal thing. Like, I'm in charge of this.
He's going fucking Jackie Weaver on his ass.
That's a reference.
But Cugliari's like, no, you need to have 3 field members and 2 office coordinators to run stuff. And I don't see your other 2 members here. And Watson's like, that's why I've hired Collins and Woodstock to join FCP. Okay. And he hasn't told them this. But
like, what? She's like, I've already got a job.
But it turns out that they had put an evacuation order out of Portland, this town. and Cagliari's cancelled it.
Oh.
And then because he's like, this isn't real.
Right, so he hasn't really seen any proof of anything.
Yeah.
Right.
And then Watson realizes that he's also cancelled the tanks, the mortar, like missiles, jets. And he was like,
this Cagliari.
Yeah. But the satellite link is up. And Watson's like, right, let's give a look at Ashton, the previous town that was having the parade.
Yeah.
And when they see it, it's just, and Cagliari's like, you can't see a fucking imaginary monster like from a satellite. And then they see Ashton and it's just like death and destruction everywhere.
Just like fucked.
Like fires, buildings destroyed, like bodies everywhere. And Watson's like, yeah, we need to fucking evacuate Portland and get the jets in.
Stupid right.
Fucking arrogance of man right there.
And then Watson wants an infrared look at the woods. And they, as soon as they put it on, they realize like the creature is here. No, oh shit!
Too late. Kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, it comes out the woods, and Watson's like, right, everybody, aim at its legs. Like, try and slow it down and knock it down.
Yeah.
Avoid the big orange spots on it.
Yeah. Don't do the Shadow of the Colossus boss spot. No.
Cagliari has just run away at this point. So Watson's
Classic
like, right,
mod.
all you lot are under my command now. And he gets like a grenade launcher.
I like this guy. He knows coffee and he knows grenade launchers.
Yeah, he's quite. And this he's like an IT guy who's like a bit chubby and overweight and has never really seen action. But
he's like, fuck it, I'm involved.
He's been waiting for this day his whole life.
Yeah. The monster now stands 80 feet tall.
Is that bigger than the skeleton from the start? I think it is.
So that was like a 30 head skull.
Oh, just the skull, right.
Was like 30 foot.
Right, okay. I thought the whole
maybe
thing
that suggests how big it will get.
Yeah, that's what I'm
Maybe.
thinking.
A good frame of reference.
When they look at the infrared, they realize that the creature's not cold or warm-blooded. It's hot-blooded.
Wow, okay. So like when it did the weird heat thing.
Yeah.
The fireball.
And they say when its blood hits oxygen, it combusts.
Right.
Which is what caused like the fireballs. So
it squirts its blood as an attack.
Yeah, and I think also the explosion heals it back up again.
Right. And then we know that it can heal quite quickly anyway.
Yeah. Watson shoots a grenade launcher and kind of everyone starts like piling this creature with stuff. And then the creature like roars at them. And like everyone can like feel it to their bones. It's so loud.
That's cool.
And then it like Watson gets knocked over, and then he suddenly sees like 20 people and cars like flying over him, followed by like a tail that's just like whipped them. And yeah, he then shoots the grenade launcher again, but they kind of get pushed back, and they kind of jump. This is Watson and Collins kind of jump off the road into like this grassy bank.
Right.
And then they hear like a huge explosion and a monster roar. Watson sees more cars flying through the air. He sees a jet explode in the sky. And like at this point, he can then see the monster like from below. And he's like, it is beyond comprehension. Like this thing's ridiculous.
So he's been thrown in the air at this point.
No, they kind of jumped. They tried
like
to get off the road because shit was flying everywhere. And then he like sees the tail sweep past and he starts to feel queasy. He puts his hand to his head and feels blood. His vision fades to black and then there's nothing.
Oh no. Death.
Right, so chapter-wise, we're about 2/3 of the way through now, so I think this might be a good point to stop and ask you guys what you think of the story so far.
I think it's fantastically told, for one thing.
Yeah, you're making everything very clear. It's quite a mammoth task.
That's really
gargantuan, you could say.
But in terms of the story itself, we've met all kind of the main characters.
Yeah.
Shit's going down.
Yeah, it's really kicking off.
This kind of stuff is right up my street. You know, big
it's
crazy monsters.
Almost intentional there, isn't
around.
it? Yeah.
Where do you see the story going from here?
I think there's going to be a final showdown between Gordon and the giant lizard.
Yeah, so Gordon's got like a monster heart, basically, hasn't he?
Yeah.
So he's got a connection to it. We know that, but we don't know what his kind of angle is now. He's got some sort of drive, like whatever she's called. What was she called?
Mago.
Mago the monster.
So there's some kind of connection. However, what I'll say is, Gordon, he was a bit of a dick.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And by having a lizard or whatever the fuck it is heart, is he now more human than he was before? That's my question.
That's a good question. We may find out the answer. I have no idea. I mean, I imagine in the kind of monster movie kaiju type thing that it's progressing into, that this creature will continue to grow and become more and more of a threat. But other than that, I have no idea where the kind of interpersonal, kind of mysterious side of it's going to go.
Yeah, I think I was in a similar place where I was reading the book.
Yeah. I mean, what I'm thinking in terms of the little tidbits we've had so far, there was the brief bit of Mago when Mago was a human, with the horrible situation with the murder-suicide, fake suicide situation. I don't know if that is driving this kind of anger or if that's going to come into it at all, but I imagine that will play some sort of part there.
Right, yeah.
But other than that, yeah.
Oh, so I'm a bit sad that the scientist woman is dead.
Yeah, although
I thought she was going to be like a main character when she was
introduced.
The
person that's in the belly, is that not the scientist? Is she the one that was dead in the place? We're pretty sure.
She was
the
like
woman in the
torn
belly
apart,
was just
wasn't
somebody from the town.
There was the person that was like half eaten that they recognised.
Yeah.
That was Dr. Elliot.
Yeah.
Reed.
I also as well. I also like the touch of Mago could remember having a conversation.
Yeah.
While she was still a lizard, but couldn't remember what the language was anymore, which shows
and the same with the writing
like
as
deviating from humans more.
Quite
nice.
I think one thing that Jeremy Robertson, the author, does quite well as this progresses is that at the start with the lab staff, she's referred to as Mago. And then the next point that she's only referred to as like a creature, and then we're at the point where everyone refers to it as a monster.
Right.
So it's kind of like the terminology using is developing
with the monster.
But like it's never explicitly said. You just kind of pick up on it. But anyway, we go into chapter 30, and we're with Endo, who last we knew was with Gordon heading up to Zoom HQ, having just killed FBI people in the car park.
Is this from Endo's perspective then?
Yeah.
Oh, we had one of these so far.
No.
Interesting. Okay.
And he starts talking about like what he deems acceptable in terms of death, and he was like 7 people killed so far is acceptable because it kept him close to the one thing he wanted. And he's driven by he wants to know what they found in Alaska. Right. He was there from day one. That's all that's what he wants to know. Yeah. And like being close to Gordon is the way he can do that because Gordon's like researching it. And he talks about how he grew up watching kaiju like Godzilla, Gamera, Mothra.
I was going to say they're going to bring in that. That's the reason to have a Japanese character in lots of ways in this situation.
So he grew up with that, so he's kind of fascinated by this huge skull they found. And to him, it proved that kaiju exist. So he wants to like find out more. And he was starting to get a bit annoyed that Gordon was researching the monster, not because discovery, but because he wanted a new heart himself.
Yeah, that personal gain. Yeah.
But he's still like, it's still getting me to my own goals. So they get inside Zoom, which is like the 50th floor of this big building in Boston. And as they step in, there's a receptionist there. And Gordon immediately goes over and kills her, like strangles her. And Endo's just kind of like, whoa.
It's getting to the point where it's too much for him.
Almost. And he's like, we didn't need to do that. Like, we work here. Like, we could have walked in.
Maybe he is worse now than actually.
Yeah. Well, it's like, he's like, oh no, that was Sally. I kind of liked her kind of thing. It's that kind of thing.
And then 4 guards arrive and Endo puts his hands up. And Gordon like jumps into action like super quick, like superhuman. Punched one straight away who dies immediately, and then quickly like shoots the other 3 before they can do anything. And Endo's like, this doesn't make any sense. Like, we could have walked in. Like, this seems like bloodlust more than anything else.
Just for the sake
and
of
he starts worrying that Gordon's going to become like Mago. And then he starts thinking like, for every Gamera, there's a Ghidorah, a Megalon, a Gigan. So he's like, am I on the wrong side of this?
Right, yeah.
But the office is like empty. It's like 7:15. and it's just like the guards and receptionists they can see. And they go up to the office of a guy called Paul Stanton, who is the CEO of Zoom. And
so what's Gordon in this? He's like an investor or something.
He's
like...
one of the higher ups,
yeah.
like lead investigator type thing. He's kind of been given his own thing to research,
right? Like a project manager almost.
Yeah, but Stanton's like the overall boss. And they go in there, and he's expecting the receptionist to come in, and Gordon's just like, "Nah, she's dead," and it kind of takes Stanton back.
Yeah, of course.
And Stanton goes to call the police, and Gordon quickly draws his gun and shoots the phone out of his hand.
So he's got like reaction, like
yeah. And he's like, "Tell me everything you know about the creature." And Stanton's like, "We only know two things. We think it's alien, and we looked inside like its stomach, and it only ate people. It's the only thing in its stomach is people."
And this is what the one that they found before
in Alaska. Yeah.
The skeleton corpse kind of thing. Yeah.
And Gordon goes to like execute Stanton. He's like pulled out his gun. Endo gets to the point where it's like, actually Stanton's the way to learn more about this monster, not Gordon, which makes killing him unacceptable. And he kicks Gordon's gun out of his hand like, as he shoots, and like knocks Gordon to the floor. And then aims a gun at Gordon. Gordon dives out the way, but Endo's like hit his shoulder as he's dived, and he kind of stumbles back and falls through the window, the window of this 50th foot floor.
Wow, so they're in like the top bit, like the office.
Endo and Stanton like run to the window, and they see the general like putting himself in through a window like 10 stories below,
like swung through kind of
thing. And Endo turns to Stanton and is like, "Right, you're hiring me now." And Stanton's like, "What?" And he's like, "No, you're hiring me. I'm the only one that can keep you alive." Because he's like
a bodyguard, basically.
So they like go to the roof to get into a helicopter, and like go off in the helicopter and see Gordon standing there in Stanton's office. So he's gonna run back up.
Oh shit!
And then seen them. And Endo's like, "Neither of us are safe until he's dead. Like he's just gonna hunt
so
us now."
Two threats here, like now with the monster and Gordon.
And Endo's like, he's no longer human. Like he's been killing people, like innocent people. That's not acceptable.
So this whole thing is like it's ticked over, like you say,
it's crossed the line. And then John wakes up. And he's very groggy. And Collins is there. And he's in a bad shape. And Collins is like, "Yeah, Ted said that you like wouldn't want to go to the hospital." And he's like, "Yeah, you're right. There's the shit going on." And he's like, "Collins, you're gonna be my new partner." Like he's like, not in like a sexual way, but like I need a good partner, and we kind of like clicked.
I wouldn't, but you know, it's not really the right time.
And it's kind of very much saying it without saying it, but he's like, we work well together. Like we've been through a load of shit already
in the last like 4 hours or something.
And he finds out he's been asleep for like 2 hours, and Ted Watson comes in. He survived the thing. He's a bit beaten up. And he says Portland got absolutely leveled, like destruction everywhere. Turns out they're at the headquarters of Fusion Center Paranormal. So their headquarters. And he kind of goes down to the main room. It's very much like that room in Lazarus. So
like
big TVs everywhere, like a big open hall.
Classic control room kind of thing.
And he sees Woodstock, Collins, Watson, and someone called Cooper looking at the TV. Cooper is the third member of FCP.
The whole squad assembled.
The whole squad is assembled. She's described as very much like
she.
Yeah, like
very presumptuous, Sam.
They said she.
Yeah, she's wearing like a suit. She's very much like a power woman type thing. Like never smiles kind of character.
Like a corporate kind of person, business only.
And they're watching the news about Portland, and it just looks like horrific, like fires, dead people, everything. And Watson says, everybody's looking for the monster, but nobody can find it anywhere.
Weird,
but
for such a big monster.
But they're like
Watson. He was the guy that stopped the evacuation, though, wasn't he?
No, that was Cagliari.
Oh,
Watson was the
Cagliari.
other one.
Watts is the coffee guy.
The coffee guy.
What's happened to Cagliari?
We don't know. He
legged
ran
it.
away.
Oh, of course.
He's
yeah.
probably dead because loads of people
Coward, man.
died.
Coward.
But basically, FCP are now like in charge of this whole operation, like because it was a paranormal thing. And Watson says he's found out who the monster is. She's two people in one.
Okay.
And we've found out this person, Mago Tilly, was walked in on her father, killing her mother.
Yeah.
She got shot, fell into a coma, and needed a liver to survive. They couldn't find a liver, so she died. And then her body was transferred to this secret lab.
Yeah.
And then they said they start talking about the word Nemesis they found, and they figure out it's a name. The only reference they can find is the Greek goddess Nemesis,
Right.
who is the personification of vengeance.
Wow. Okay.
Who's depicted as like a beautiful woman with wings, but some older depictions of Nemesis have her as like a huge monster.
Cool. Okay. That fits.
And they're like, we're not saying, Watson's like, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying like gods exist.
It's not actually.
Yeah, but this creature could be ancient and those myths could have been based on this creature. It's like, don't get me wrong, I'm not being silly here. And they're like, it could become the myth and then like adopted by the Greeks and became the daughter of Zeus and stuff. And they say because they found this flesh and they can analyze it, there's two distinct strands of DNA in it.
Right.
One from Mago and one from something they've never seen before.
Okay.
They think it's either alien or it's been here before, like life on Earth.
Thing, yeah.
But it's like, but we need to kill it. We need to kill it. They also haven't spotted Gordon or Endo since they're running at the lab.
Right. Yeah.
There's no news on them anymore. But they have found stuff out about Gordon. His last mission was the mission in Alaska, during which there was an accidental death of a Lenny that was
we know all about
Lenny.
that.
apparently a gun went off accidentally, and the gun belonged to somebody called Katsu Endo. And they're like, they start putting the pieces together. And they're like, okay, so Endo must have started working for Gordon then, because he then left the military.
Very clever, these people, aren't they?
And started working for Zoom.
Right.
So they were like, what's happened to him is he's found this thing, he's quit the military, contacted Zoom and been like, hey, I've got something you guys are gonna have a look at.
Made absolute bank doing so.
Yeah.
I bet, yeah.
But the FCP now represents the combined resources of every federal criminal agency and the US military.
Nice.
And John's like, as far as I know, Nemesis doesn't have a monopoly on vengeance.
So you can imagine that in like a trailer, can't you?
Yeah. And then we get another point of view from Mago.
Oh, nice.
And she's like, I'm just swimming. I've got no memory of being able to swim before, but it just came naturally. At first, I didn't know what to do, but then found using my tail and swimming like an iguana became natural. She was still confused by like the pain and the hunger and the chaos that she just witnessed, but still just needed to eat more than anything else. And then she hears something from the coast, someone screaming for help. And we get another side shot of basically there's this party boat going on and the secretary is being like sexually assaulted by her boss and like screaming, but there's big loud music nobody can hear. And like it's really quite horrible. Like I'm not going to go into detail. But basically this guy is about to rape this woman. And then suddenly he's like, it's from her point of view, he's like lifted off her and like the sun's blocked out. And then she could just see this huge monster looking into her eyes. And then suddenly there's screams and there's 20 people in this monster's hand. And she's like dove into the water and just swam for it. And part of her's just like an overriding feeling of wanting to say thank you to this thing because she's starting to get worried about like she's either dead or if she survives, then he's got better lawyers. Like, what will my family think and all that stuff. Then she starts worrying like, what when I get back and all these people are dead, what do I say? And then swims into like a brick wall And she's like, but I'm really far from the coast. And then she realizes that there's teeth closing around her.
Oh no.
And she drowned before she even like made it to the stomach.
I thought it was going to be a moment of humanity from the.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of like she's heard the screaming for help and has instinctively gone there, but then doesn't know what to do.
Yeah, so it's almost like it felt like it was on her side, like protecting her from this horrible person. But I guess the animal instincts took over when she got
pretty
there.
much. And then we quickly go back to Mega, who's saying like her hunger is just getting bigger as her body grows, and her skin's getting quite tight, and moving's becoming quite hard. Part of her's revolted by eating humans, and some say it's wrong. So she's like, I'm going to start looking for other things to eat. So there's like a battle between the monster and the girl.
Moral compass.
Because I guess because it's this combination of two things, right?
Yeah.
So the original thing that it was wouldn't have necessarily had this extra voice inside it.
Pretty much. And it's still like a 13-year-old girl because that's the oldest she grew to. We're back with John and they're trying to investigate Zoom, but they've covered their tracks really well. And then he has a bit of a chat with Collins about them, and they're like, maybe we'll take it slow. And don't really care.
So the implication is like they're getting on pretty well.
Yeah, but he's like, at some point you need to tell me about what's going on.
Yes, the secret backstory.
Turns out she's married.
Oh no!
But he's just been released from prison. He like beat the shit out of a mailman for talking to her, put her in hospital, like beating her up. And the reason she went to Maine was to like hide from him because he got released.
Everyone's got fucking tragic backstories in this, haven't they? It's all like abuse and manipulation and trauma. Yeah.
But then Cooper,
I guess that's kind of a theme of the whole thing, isn't it? Really?
Yeah. Cooper comes in and is like, right, get in the helicopter. You need to go to the beach.
So Cooper's the volunteer helicopter.
Cooper's the third member of FCP.
Business only.
Yeah, Woodstock is the pilot.
Yeah.
They get down to the beach and there's like a bunch of police like at the beach, and they see like black scales in the ocean, and they're like, oh shit, is it the monster?
They're like, that's why we couldn't find it. It was just in the water.
But there's like nobody's really panicking. So they're on the beach and Woodstock's in the helicopter above with like a torch. They can kind of see it. And it's a huge floating sack of rotten skin.
Yeah.
They describe it as a husk.
Husks all over, man.
And John concludes that the creature's molting.
Right, yeah, the tight skin makes sense.
And he sees a bit of the skin and like aims his gun and shoots at it 10 times, like empties his gun and then pulls it in, and all 10 rounds are just like on the skin, haven't pierced it at all. And they're like, well, that's not good. And then a man comes over like panicking, he's like, there's more down there and it's bloodier. And they're like, okay, and they go down there and it's a body like bitten in half. But they soon realise it's a whale.
Because it's going for bigger, well, not bigger, but non-human things.
And Collins is like, that's a fin whale. They grow to like 90 feet. There's only 20 foot of it left. Like, and then there's like 3 more carcasses of whales.
Nice.
And they're like, this must be Nemesis.
It's pretty big then.
It's got a stomach that can have a 70-foot whale in it.
Yeah.
As it stands.
3 of them. And then we get to stage 3.
Hey, here we go.
So they're back at FCP HQ. And the land in Alaska was owned by Zoom. But they've heard news that a cruise ship has disappeared. And they're like, oh shit, that must be Nemesis. And they get some images of the site in Alaska, and it looks like a mining operation. But then 3 months later, it's just like a pile of brown earth. So something's happened there, and they've quickly covered it up.
And this was the place where they found it, is the sort of assuming.
And they've also heard news of General Gordon. The FBI who were looking for him are dead. One of them looks like a steel beam fell into his chest. That's the guy who got punched.
Right.
And no sign of Gordon since. And as they're talking, they're in this town called Beverly, near Portland, also where the writer's from. People would like to do that.
Yeah.
And they look down, they can see the harbour, so in like quite a big building up on the hills, and they see Nemesis approaching. It's now over 240 feet tall.
I don't even know. I
Shit.
can't even imagine how big that is.
So Godzilla in
Yeah.
like the 2014 version is about 400 feet.
Okay.
But obviously Godzilla's huge, but
Yeah,
getting
to
there.
like 2/3 kind of a bit there. Yeah.
Kind of like bigger than like King Kong is traditionally shown.
Yeah.
Like
So massive.
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 And John kind of
Fucking big is another way of saying it.
John now gets a good look at like what Nemesis now looks like, and I can send you another picture.
Yay.
He notices that like it's bulkier, and has kind of lost some of the aspects from before. How would you?
Wow.
Looking very hench, very packed.
Yeah. Less of a feminine face that we had before. Still kind of a small alienish face at the front.
Yeah.
But definitely more like a kind of like a I don't know. Yeah, like if an alien like a xenomorph got like really big and like slightly spikier and like kind of lean, but like also chunky. Yeah, it's quite hard to describe.
Yeah.
Big
He's
claws,
got
big feet.
bigger sacks as well, I think.
Oh yeah, big old sacks. Or those those the boobs.
They are
The
also.
boob sacks.
Are they
They're-
glowing
they're-
as well?
yeah,
Glowing
yeah.
boobs. Yeah.
It's going all the way down. It's got these big spikes as well. They notice that the middle fingers have now kind of joined together into one longer claw from
Oh,
before.
Yeah. So almost like a thumb, a big finger, and then two kind of like non-fingers. there.
Yeah.
Big old feet and big old tail with triple
And-
kind of spike on it.
And this is like 200 feet tall. So it's less chunky than like Godzilla. It's still more like human shape.
Yeah, kind of like lithe looking almost like. I don't know
Yeah.
if that's the right word.
And John's like, still like the face looks different, but the eyes can still look fairly human.
Oh, weird.
But they're like, why has Nemesis turned up here? She must be here for a reason. We then get to Gordon, who is driving through Boston on his own now because Endo's gone. He's got like he's drawn to something, a certain building, and he gets there and he doesn't recognize the building. He doesn't know why he's there, but he's like, I need to go here. Goes in, there's a doorman who he shoots immediately. And then
Classic, yeah.
yeah, and then these three like rich businessmen come down and start like taking the piss out of him because he's like, oh, I'm the 10th doorman. Because they kind of get close to the door and he's like, I can't bring more people here, so I can't kill them there because they'll get out. And they say they earn like 35k a week and kind of rubbing it in. He's worth nothing. And he's like, I'm gonna
Can
fucking
they
get
can they
them.
see the dead guy?
No, he's
the
behind
three?
like the desk.
Okay.
They're just super chill about this.
It's a bit like
Very calmly
American
talking to
Psycho.
someone, they just
American
sort of fuck someone up.
yeah. But yeah, he heads up to the penthouse and he goes in there and he's looking around. He's like, I don't know why I'm here. And then here's someone in the bathroom and he bursts in and this guy like is terrified, like falls to the floor. And then he's kind of like, he sees Gordon, who still looks very normal. He's like, do you know who the fuck I am? And kind of gets up. And as he gets up, he like lifts himself up off like the toilet and the bath. And Gordon's pointing his gun at him. He's like, come with me. First, wash your fucking hands because that's disgusting. And he ties him up and kind of leads him in. But he starts leaving C4 everywhere that he's got in his bag.
Nice.
And he's like, right, I'll be back in a sec because he goes off planting some C4
Wait, is this
around the
got-
building.
Gordon planting C4 is this the
Yeah,
other guy?
it's Gordon.
Is that because he instinctively wants to plant it? Like,
Part of his programming.
what's his reason for planting the
He's
C4?
got a plan. We don't
Oh,
know what it
okay.
is, but he's got a plan.
And we don't know why he wants to get this guy.
We don't know who this guy
No,
is.
no.
Oh, okay.
I think
I
I know
see.
who it is, but I'm going to save it in case it spoils. it.
Okay, well, if you're right, let me know. So John Collins are getting in the helicopter with Woodstock, And they notice that Nemesis isn't killing anyone. It's coming in the harbour. There's loads of people there in cars, and it's not killing or destroying. It's just kind of walking through. And he mentions the Coast Guard needs to come, and he says from sea level, the average person can see 3 miles to the horizon. And I was like, oh yeah, I learned that recently.
We talked about, yeah.
But he's like, Nemesis is so tall, she could see a hell of a lot further.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
So she'll be able to see the boats from far away before they kind of get within shooting range. But there's also 2 jets incoming that are like 5 minutes away. And there's loads of ships between them and Boston, which is just down the coast.
Right. And that's where Mr. Gordon is.
That's where Gordon is. Then Nemesis comes up to this like condo on like a hill, and she's just like staring at it for a while. And they're in the helicopter being like, hold on, we don't know what's going on. The jets are now like 2 minutes away. Nemesis goes to like swing and hit the building, then stops just before. And then turns and walks away. And John's like, don't shoot the missiles. She's not doing anything. Don't call something.
Kind of thing.
But the missiles have been shot. And John's like, are you fucking kidding me? Why are you shooting? This is my hometown. And you're just shooting missiles into like a like civilian population. But the president stepped in. The president's given this order. So it's gone all the way to the top.
All the way. Is it Obama then?
Yeah, it would have been Barack. 2012.
Barack 2012.
Yeah. I think it's a fictional.
Yeah, they don't say.
But
that darn Obama. Thanks, Obama.
And John gets told that this is no longer a DHS operation, it's war, which is why the president's come in. And fire shots are hitting Nemesis, but like no real damage. Other shots hit. And then like Nemesis like midsection comes exposed. And then there's a huge flash of bright light. They've headed back to like HQ to get away a bit. And there's this huge explosion. And the shockwave's so powerful, like knocks everyone out.
Wow.
And they're like, oh my God.
So they've kind of seemingly like pierced it, and it's done that thing that it did before with the blood. Yeah.
And then we get Mago, who's feeling like this intense but fairly brief pain. And she's like, the whales did enough to kind of focus her. Because she could eat, but then had an urge to go south again. She thinks she's over 300 foot at this point because she can see like Boston skyscrapers on the horizon. And she's like, she thinks of the pain and thinks of going around the planes and the ships. But she's like, you know what? There's guilty humans and there's innocent ones, and these ones aren't good. She's like, if they didn't attack, I would have just left the harbor.
Yeah.
Then she gets like an urge. It feels like a signal to go down to Boston. Screams out like a roar. And she thinks like smart. She like warns Boston in a way. She's like, smart people will flee. Others will die.
It's like giving them a little chance, kind of.
Because there's still a bit of humanity in her. And she swims out to sea, and she's kind of being drawn forward by the bloodlust. And she's like, if humans want to harm me, then I'll get them first. And there's submarines like shooting missiles at her, and she just swims straight into them, takes them like head on, bites a submarine in half and like snaps it, and then just keeps heading towards Boston. And takes out like 2 ships, some helicopters, jets on the way, like becoming a bit unstoppable. John wakes up like confused, like he's in the helicopter, but it's kind of landed at an angle on top of the roof. And they go to the edge of the building, the 3 of them, and they see the destruction that's happened from this explosion. They can't see Nemesis. They also can't see a Nemesis body, so like it's not dead. Watson and Cooper downstairs. The glass is shattered in. Watson's okay. Cooper has a huge shard of glass in her chest.
Oh no.
And she gives like a big passionate speech about like, John, you were there from the start. You're the one that needs to stop this. Like, fuck everyone else. Like, you need to do this. And like he gets a bit emotional and tells Watson to like drive her to the hospital because like she can, and like tell them who she is so she gets priority.
So which one was that? They got the glass in her?
Cooper, the businesswoman.
Yeah.
And they get told that General Gordon has been spotted. He's in Boston with a hostage who's got like a hood over so they can't identify the hostage. Just standing on the ceiling. The stairs to the building have been booby-trapped and loads of police went in there and have died. So like we can't get up to the roof.
C4 situation.
Yeah. And they said Gordon was kind of spotted around the same time that Nemesis decided not to destroy the building. And they're like, Gordon and Nemesis are connecting. We don't know why, but we're heading to Boston.
Yeah.
Shipping up to Boston in a helicopter. So they get a call from Director Stevens as they're flying over there, who's the head of the DHS.
Right.
The boss's boss. And they kind of go through the story and he's like, tell me everything you can. I'm going to see the president. And John's like, there's not a lot we can do when orders to shoot comes down from the commander in dickhead.
He's got a bit of an attitude, hasn't he?
Yeah. But he's like, one thing, tell the president, stop shooting at the orange membranes. That's what causes the explosions. Every time they get hit, there's a huge explosion. Like, the bigger the wound, the bigger the explosion. Aim for the legs. And
that was a bit of a weak spot in the first bit of the story, wasn't it? When they shot.
Yeah.
But now it's become the total opposite.
It's still a weak spot, but her healing process is the fire, which has the other thing of, like big explosions gone off. And he wants to know, like, he says to John, like, what can stop this? And he's like, maybe a nuke, but like, I don't want to tell you to use a nuke.
And also that could cause even more fire and shit, couldn't it?
And Stevens is like, I'll let him know what you recommend, and then like hangs up. And John's like, I don't want to be the guy that told like the military to set off a nuke on American soil. Like, fuck off. So they're like, we need to get Nemesis into the ocean somehow, like away from the population.
Do a fire thing there, and it wouldn't be too.
And they see Nemesis like walking along the water, like hip deep. And they're like, we need to get to Boston first. There's some other helicopters there, and they like, don't shoot the membranes. They're like, radio, shoot the legs. There's a bit of an action scene where Nemesis takes down some of the helicopters. They just about survive. Nemesis jumps at them and kind of just misses because Woodstock's a good pilot. Where are we? So they head towards Boston and they kind of look back just to like see how big the monster is. But then coming from Boston, they see what it looks like, a swarm of bees coming over Boston, and it's jets and helicopters and like the entire like potential of the American military. And he kind of like starts getting hope, and then they start shooting missiles, and he's like, fuck, they didn't listen to me, they're just shooting. And they're just getting to Boston now, and he's like, all right, Woodstock, we need to get behind a building because there's gonna be a fucking explosion. And there's a huge explosion, glass shattering in Boston. Nemesis is now reaching the outskirts of Boston. There's an airport there, crushing 747s beneath her feet. And then they're like, we need to keep going, and they spot the building with Gordon and his hostage on the top. And they're like, right, we need to get them. The police and the snipers have left. They don't care about these two anymore.
It's like one thing's overridden the other. Quite obviously. I guess no one else knows they're connected as well, do they? John's
got this like wingsuit that his ex had built. And jumps out of the helicopter and kind of floats down. She was like a tech person, and tells Collins to like meet him up. They go through the front. And he kind of gets closer and closer, and then sets off his parachute as he gets close to the roof, and kind of sees Gordon like staring out into the ocean, was waiting for Nemesis. He's trying to figure out, like, is he controlling her or is she controlling him? But then he kind of gets close and kicks Gordon like in the chest from the parachute, detaches it, and And then Gordon just like stares at him like looking hungry, and he's like, I'm impressed, but you can't stop her. And he's like, you want to lead her away from the city? And John's like, she's literally the Greek goddess of vengeance, that you don't want to be on her side. And he's like, I thought she was an alien. And John's like, yeah, maybe that too.
Maybe both. It's one of those classic combinations there.
And then they kind of, Gordon like throws John away because he's so strong. And kind of, and then we cut to, Collins is coming in the building, sees the dead doorman running up, and as she gets to the stairwell, suddenly there's a gun in her face, and it's Endo. And she's like, oh, fuck. And he lowers his gun, and he's like, we're not enemies anymore. The general's not my employer. Like, I'm here to kill Gordon.
Nice. Good old Endo.
Who's he saying that to? Is that Collins?
Collins. And she's kind of reluctant, but okay, I guess we need to go up together.
Better than nothing, isn't it? Yeah.
And then this is stage 4, the final stage.
The crescendo.
The crescendo, if you will. Gordon is like throwing John. He's about to like literally kill him. And then Collins jumps in and punches him. Endo turns up, kicks Gordon back. And Jordan kind of sees Endo and he's like surprised to see him, but he's kind of like, actually, I know this guy can fight, so I don't care. And Endo's like shooting Gordon in the chest and like nothing's happening. And Gordon rips off his top and he's just got like a black, like scaly torso. We quickly cut to Nemesis, who's getting increasingly annoyed by missiles. Kind of gets to Boston, but she's so big she can't squeeze between the buildings, and they're quite well built. So she like knocks one down, it kind of falls on her, and she's like, this is gonna like take ages. So she turns like all the jets where the missiles, sticks her claws into her chest and like pulls her ribs out.
Ouch.
Yes, we then get back to the people.
Is that she pulled her ribs out to fit through the buildings?
No, to kind of expose her
her
chest,
special move,
because the jets are shooting missiles at
to
her.
like fuck up all the buildings. So
Essentially. There's more fight at all. Gordon lifts Endo at one point and looks in the eye and says, "You've been judged guilty."
So he's got a real god complex, this guy.
Yeah.
Right now,
Collins kind of gets him out of it. Eventually it gets to the point where John's like, there may be one weak spot if he's becoming like Mago.
Right.
Aims his gun and shoots him dead in the eye.
Right, because the human eyes from
before. And he kind of stumbles back and he seems to be falling. And then John runs and like kicks him off the edge of the building, 34 stories, and he, as it's described, pancakes on the roof of a bus. But then suddenly John's thrown back by a huge explosion.
Right, yes.
He gets up and sees like the entirety of downtown Boston like crumbling. The core of the city is a black husk.
Nice. This guy loves using the word husk.
Very husky story.
Husky.
Skyscrapers are falling. Missiles are raining down on Nemesis.
This guy hates Boston as well.
It's a
Clearly.
wicked crescendo.
The orange membranes have now become black. And he's like, whatever was in them has been used up.
Bloodless.
Yeah. Maybe. And then they find the man that's been tied up and they grab him. The helicopter lands on the roof and they're getting into there. And this guy screams because he sees Nemesis for the first time. And then the phone rings and Watson tells them the building Nemesis didn't destroy back at the other place, the condo, and the penthouse are both owned by the same guy.
Yeah.
Alexander Tilly,
hey!
father of Mago.
Here we fucking go. Yes.
And John
were you right, Sam?
I was right.
Yeah, I thought.
I also thought the same.
Yeah, well done.
And John like grabs him just before they get into the helicopter and throws him down. And he's like, he points the gun at him, and he's like, "You fucking did this!" And this guy is just like, "Oh, I don't know." And then he's like, "You murdered your wife and kid." And he's like, "Oh, she's a cheating bitch." And like that stupid kid came home and he's like, "Look at this." And he's like,
that's what trauma leads to. Fucking Nemesis.
and he's like, I'm gonna invite Nemesis right here, and like tells Collins and Woodstock to go off in the helicopter whilst he holds Alexander there. And then a missile hits Nemesis, and like a big bit of black flesh falls off her, and there's a big patch of white. And John's like, "Is that bone? Have we finally got there?" The skies are now empty. All the jets and helicopters are like run out of missiles. And then Nemesis starts pulling off flesh off herself. And he realizes the white isn't bone, it's flesh.
It's like another bit underneath.
Yeah, we are very much near the end.
Yeah. Well, we're at stage 4 now, I guess.
Yeah.
We? Or was it stages?
Stage 4,
Stages,
yeah. He's trying to scream Nemesis to get her attention because he thinks like this guy could end it.
Yeah.
And
like a sacrifice kind of
she's
thing.
not responding to Nemesis. And then he screams Mago, and she like kind of turns and looks and spots them. She's kind of there in front of the building now, staring down at them. And John's like, she looks like stressed and tired.
Yeah.
And like he can kind of see some recognition on her face. And he says Mago again, and she like molts off all this black stuff and kind of reveals this final form of just like white, like before, but with white. And then she like roars, and the flesh all comes out, and then it's like smooth white skin. Her back splits and like wings unfurl.
The winged goddess from before.
And
yes.
I'm gonna send you the final picture of this description. And I'll continue describing it as they put it as it kind of comes up. But where is it? So yeah, he's like the wings, instead of like feathers, they're like diamond scales.
That's fucking sick.
So yeah, how are you gonna? What do you think of this final form?
Yeah.
Like a 4-layered wing.
But yeah, they're not feathers; they're like diamonds.
Like kind of like butterfly wings, but you can see they look scaly.
Yeah,
and the body is vaguely like similar, just like taller and kind of slightly more slender, I guess, than before.
Yeah,
just because I guess it's much taller.
The neck's doesn't look quite as long.
Yeah, I think the rest of it's grown more into its size.
Yeah. Like a xenomorph with a little person alien face, and then like massive armored butterfly wings that are all spiky.
Yeah. So anyway, the diamond scales start like moving, and kind of focusing on Alexander, and John kind of notices that the scales are like reflecting the sunlight, and kind of focusing the sunlight on Alexander, and she kind of thinks that like, oh, he's like, what's happening? And then like, because all these diamonds are being like focused down, they're kind of like creating like a beam of sunlight, like with a microscope. Like,
so like doing a big laser thing.
Yeah, pointing at Alexander, and he just kind of bursts into flame and then is incinerated. But the building's shaking, and she's cut like a laser through the building.
Nice.
And it's like, fuck, I wasn't expecting this like power.
Power move.
Is that a bit overkill, do you think? Or do you think he deserved every little
Well,
bit of that?
she's killed thousands of people
This
so
is
far.
one step too far.
Yeah,
it's like Endo. That's just about enough, actually. Lasers, oh, how do you know? They're not in the Geneva Convention, are they?
Some jets kind of come back. They've restocked, and this time when the missiles hit her, like he can see her bleeding, like she's actually being harmed.
So without the scales on.
Without the scales, yeah. And she kind of heads back towards the sea. There's this another kind of silly dramatic bit where John, still with the wingsuit, jumps off the building and kind of floats down, and the helicopter pulls up next to him and he floats into the helicopter.
Very cool.
And they go high to see Mago, and she's kind of running through the city almost like a cat, he describes it. And she hits the water, and John kind of finds himself urging her on. He's like despite knowing she's killed so many, like deep inside, she's just like an innocent girl.
I think we're all on Mago's side at this point now.
Yeah, and he's like, with Alexander dead, we might not see her again. And she kind of slips into the depths of the water. Boston has been destroyed. And his final thought is that Mago killed Alexander with sunlight. She was a being of purity.
Wow, okay.
then-
Hot, maybe. I mean, the rest of it, I think you can argue against that.
And that's the story. We've got 3 epilogues quickly.
Of course, 2 prologues. We have to have at least 2 epilogues.
Yeah, the first one, I'm going to fly through it pretty quickly because they're not important. John and Collins are together now. They said that, like, the Mago things had a weird effect on the world.
Yeah, of course, as it would do.
Yeah, like the world kind of come together to support the destroyed cities. There was 13,000 people dead in the end.
Wow.
Mago was never found, but millions of shimmering scales have washed up. General Gordon was never found. Endo's still the bodyguard of Paul Stanton because you see him on TV.
I hope he's paid very, very
Yeah, he's kept.
handsomely.
I guess he would, wouldn't he? After
Yeah,
this fight?
all the evidence against Zoom was destroyed. But he's like, the world has kind of realized that we've now got a monster world that's capable of obliterating a large city, and she isn't just mindless. She's judge, jury, and executioner for the entire human race. And apparently loads of wars like come to an end because people
they're worried that they're going to get this
Yeah.
angel of death.
and he's like, maybe Mago's done the world a favor
maybe
because like
13,000's like a good price
to pay, yeah. And then and then they're in the woods, they're on one of their missions and they see Bigfoot.
Actually big.
Actually Bigfoot. And I was like, oh.
It all paid off. In the end.
We get another epilogue of an FBI agent who's at the site in Alaska. He doesn't really know what's going on there. And he finds like a cave, and then a long black arm comes out of it and grabs him. The guy he's with runs and is being chased by this huge thing, and he gets stopped by this huge thing, and it goes, "General Lance Gordon at your service," and then like smashes this other guy's skull.
So he's evolved since the last.
Yeah, but still more human than Mago was
Yeah,
because it was
yeah.
just the heart.
Right. Okay.
And then the final epilogue is Nemesis. Shed her diamond scales and was returning to her previous form because it was armored.
Right.
She had just been swimming through the oceans. That she could feel all the hate and anger of humans around the world. She was like, she didn't know whether to go to like Syria, Moscow, North Korea, Washington.
Wow.
She's like, there's
Any site
terrible
of, like,
people.
conflict kind of thing. Yeah.
But she craved silence after all justice had been served. And that is the end of Project Nemesis.
Wow.
Bravo, Lewis.
Bravo.
Very, very well.
Yeah.
done.
What an
That
interesting
was really
story.
good.
Yeah.
I was getting
That was very
quite gripped
interesting.
as that kind of got to the climax. As
I
was
liked
reading.
how it was quite a
crescendo.
personal kind of thing, which we kind of in that midpoint kind of, posited, I suppose, that it would have this link there. But
Yeah, it could have just been Big Monster Destroyed City, but there's more to it.
Much more to it. Yeah, I liked how it kind of had that like post-monster world thing, which reminded me of. Is it after the first Godzilla, the first new Godzillas?
Yeah.
Between that and the one King of the Monsters, it's like, everyone's aware of monsters and there's the world's adapting and stuff. That's always quite an interesting thing in fiction where it's like the post event before the sequel kind of thing,
So like this book has got 4 sequels. The second one's called Project Mago.
Right. Okay.
So it will lead on to that.
I guess
So
there'll be
one
more.
presumes she reverts back more.
Maybe,
be
yeah,
more
or maybe
human, perhaps?
fights the general
It
who's
could-
in like a more.
It could be like a
aggressive
Godzilla
Yeah.
thing where she fights for
It seems
a
like
good
that,
side.
Yeah.
I guess we'll get more creatures going down. I mean, the general may be a different creature because of the different proportions, like you were saying.
Yeah.
the obvious thing / hopeful thing would be for different creatures coming up as well.
Yeah, I've seen some of the book covers for the later books. It does seem like there's other kaiju.
Yeah, that's interesting.
It seems like the way to go.
Nice.
I really enjoyed reading it.
Yeah.
Some parts I wasn't sure on the author's like style, like part of the pop culture stuff, and but I think generally like it could just be John the main character.
Yeah.
I think generally the storytelling and like
was
putting the
was
pieces
the action stuff done well? Because I've never read a book that's like about this kind of.
Yeah, it is. It kind of it's suspenseful. It's kind of hard to describe retelling it, but like you were like literally reading through, like believing. I could like imagine everything that was happening quite clearly.
I mean, you read it not quickly just because you had to, but also you did get through it quite quickly, didn't you?
Yeah. So
has the author spoken about influences from? Like
he said like he's a big kaiju fan. He always has been, and he wrote a Godzilla graphic novel. So
what did you say? Did you say what it was called? The Godzilla one.
The graphic novel? No, I haven't got it written down.
What's the guy called? I can have a look quickly.
I've got Jeremy Robinson. But
I've read a few Godzilla comics, so I don't know if it would be.
Godzilla Rage Across Time.
No.
It came in 2016. I did read as well. This book is the highest selling original kaiju novel of all time.
Right, like a tie-in.
Not like a Godzilla or something.
The cover artwork for the Rage Against Time is pretty cool. Like the first one is like he's like with some ships that looks like in like the olden days.
It may be worth actually looking up the cover of Project Nemesis, because the cover is Nemesis in like Boston, I think.
Well, I was gonna say, because I think when we talked about it off pod before, there is a comic series which I think is like 5 or 6 issues that covers this book, and I was considering. Well, we talked about doing that instead of this at some point. I think now that you've told me this version, I'm considering reading through that.
It would be interesting
because I could read it in like one evening, and then I can.
Yeah, I think I saw it's like 6 issues or something.
What was I gonna look up? Nemesis.
Any I've got one extra bit of something, but any last thoughts on Nemesis?
I was going to ask, do you think this is the kind of thing that would translate well into a film, TV show, that sort of thing?
Funny you say that, because the one thing I was going to say, in May this year, so like 10 years after it came out, it'd be reported that the novel would be adapted to a TV series by Sony.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Directed by Chad Stahelski, who did the John Wick films.
Right. Okay.
So they are in the early stages of doing this as like this book as a season
TV
1.
Series makes sense, especially if they do the kind of don't show it too much.
Yeah.
Because I was sort of thinking as you were describing it, it would make a good film, but then I was like, it's a bit of a saturated market at the moment. Just with the Godzilla films.
Well, Kaiju TV series makes sense, doesn't it?
So yeah, I think that probably works quite well as a niche.
That's the cover there, David.
Oh,
so
wow.
Anyone can look this up yourself.
Yeah, Nemesis looks pure evil in that.
Pretty similar to the illustrations there, isn't it?
Yeah, so like the illustrations are in the book, so they're clearly like official kind of stuff. But it did, like when I finished it, I was like, I do want to read more. There's 4 more books, so maybe I'll get around to Project Mega at some point.
I appreciated the different perspectives as well.
Yeah,
I think it just provides more of a like comprehensive.
Yeah, I think seeing the perspective of Mega as well when she's in like the kind of monster form is kind of unique and something we've not really seen before.
Because if it was just like Godzilla, we never get an introspective part of Godzilla. We can see vague emotions and stuff but not even really emotions. It's more just like an animal going like, I'll leave you alone kind of thing. Yeah, I think that adds quite a lot to it, and it's something that would be hard to do in a visual medium
unless they had like narration.
Yeah,
it'd be interesting actually. I can picture it like, say, the fully sized Mega like swimming in the sea, narrated by like a teenage girl.
Yeah,
could be quite interesting.
Yeah, they could make that. Yeah, they could make like a full character kind of
Yeah.
thing within. Yeah.
But yeah, so that is
Nice.
Project Nemesis, the second
Well
topic of
done. Yeah,
Projoctober.
thank you for
TY.
taking all the time to both read that full book and
TY,
tell
bro.
us all of it. Yeah.
Which now leads us on to our final segment, which is Personal Projects.
Personal project.
Now it's personal.
Projects.
So, Sam and David, what have you been watching, reading, doing, discovering, researching, anything else? I've spent my week reading Project Nemesis, so I haven't got anything to say. So, I'm giving the platform over to you
And
guys.
we
I'm
did
pretty
say-
much done talking.
And we said at the start we were going to cover some of our ongoing things, but I think because of the length of the episode, we might save some of them for next week. So sorry if
Yes.
you skipped to this point and you're immediately disappointed, but you'll just have to tune in next week to hear our
Yeah, we'll
thoughts
do
on
double.
House of the Dragon and She-Hulk. But David, what have you been consuming?
So the most interesting thing I've probably seen, probably Crimes of the Future by David Cronenberg.
Cronenberg.
So I went to the cinema by myself to watch that.
Nice.
I really didn't know what to expect because the Fly by him, and I think it was like 1986 with Jeff Goldblum. That was the only other thing I'd seen of his.
Right.
And he likes his like body horror stuff, which is
Yeah.
what this film is.
Who's in it? Is Kristen Stewart in it?
Yeah, so Christian
Yeah.
Stewart's in it, and Viggo Morgenstein's in it as well.
We'll just go with that. Yeah.
And it's a very like physical performance because of like the body horror nature of it. Like everyone is just in pain constantly.
What's it about without kind of spoiling it?
So the general premise is it's like, the future. Hence the crimes.
And there's
of the
some
future.
crimes going on.
And human evolution is accelerated in like a certain percentage of the population, but it's kind of like people are evolving in seemingly very like pointless ways. People are growing extra organs. People have like extra shit on them, just like extreme growth, but people aren't really sure why.
Sounds very Cronenberg.
yeah, and it kind of follows the two main characters in it. They do like performative art where they basically do surgery on the organ that gets grown back over and over again, and they've got like a crowd, and it's kind of like an underground like scene.
That's so
the
weird.
sort of
I feel like
premise
I've
of it.
read a short story which is very similar to that, where a guy is doing increasingly extreme performance art that involves him cutting parts of himself off. I can't remember what it is, and I don't think it's based on
That rings a bell to me as well.
Yeah, I don't know. I might have a quick little look, but yeah. But
Is it good?
Yeah, it is good. It's a very, very like niche genre in terms of like I don't think most people would enjoy it particularly. I didn't really realize how strange it would be. It's the weirdest film I've seen like going to the cinema to watch, and I did feel a bit like, because it's a very like sexual film as well. And at times I was like, is this just like a porno? Basically? I did feel a bit like
went to cinema to watch porn.
I felt a bit like Robert De Niro in Taxi Driver, just like going to the cinema by myself watching a porno, feeling like a bit of a creep. And at one point I looked around and there was a lot of people there by themselves as well. And I was like, what is this? But I had to remind myself it was David Cronenberg. So I thought I told myself this is like tasteful art,
No, fair enough.
But yeah, I would recommend it, just because it is just quite a weird film.
Cool.
Yeah, and Kristen Stewart is really good in it as well.
She's a good actress.
She is.
Like, people
fantastic.
kind of-
She gets so much shit from Twilight.
Yeah.
Yeah,
People kind of
She was still trying to carve her path out then,
people came around to Robert Pattinson fairly quickly once they realised he was good, and Kristen Stewart hasn't quite had the same.
No, I
response
mean a lot
yet.
of that is the classic kind of sexism, really. Isn't
Oh,
it?
wow, I didn't want to say it, but yeah.
For sure,
You
yeah.
should say it. You should call it out wherever you go.
Cool. How about you, Sam?
I watched Jordan Peele's Nope again for the second time.
Nice.
Didn't go to cinema this time, so I got it from the old HBO Max down the road.
Horrible Body Over Max.
Exactly, yeah. I know you haven't yet seen it, Lewis.
Nope.
So I won't go into too much detail. I know that you saw it in the cinema, David.
Yeah, I did.
What did you think about it, David?
Without
spoiling
it was good.
anything.
Yeah. I thought, without going into details, I thought like certain reveals and stuff was good. It was really like well handled. And it was sort of, you're kind of like, whoa.
Yeah.
There was quite a bit of that.
I think it's very kind of thrilling. It's not like horrific, but it's got the like things of a kind of horror. It's hard without. I've got to be careful how you speak about it because it's But it's got lots of traits of a horror film without being like it. Kind of, it's very clever and
sounds very Jordan
very
Peele.
good. I would 100% recommend it. I'd love to talk about it in more detail at some point. So if you do get a chance to watch it, I might be able to send you a little link somewhere.
That would be fantastic.
But yeah, I think it's definitely up there with my films of the year, if not the best film I've seen this year.
Wow.
Other than that, I watched a Netflix film called Do Revenge, which is starring one of the cast members of Riverdale and
you love
someone,
Riverdale.
what's she called? Maya Hawke from Stranger Things.
Oh yeah.
It is kind of like, it's like a teen revenge film, as the name suggests. It wasn't great. It was quite entertaining. There's a very funny kind of continuous cameo from Sophie Turner from Game of Thrones.
I think I saw a clip of that, actually.
Is very manic and kind of unhinged, and she's potentially the best part, and she's in like 2 scenes.
Oh, nice.
It's a fun little film, and it draws on like 90s and noughties like teen films like Clueless and stuff like that. It makes them slightly more extreme. It kind of loses its way in the middle, but I think it's a fun watch. It's like, it's
so
like
it's on Netflix.
It's on Netflix
Nice.
original. So it's just come out to the world, the last month or so. But I would recommend it if you like that kind of film, but it's not like a must watch in any way. No. What about
Nice.
yourself, Lewis?
Well, like I said, I've spent my week reading Project Nemesis.
Yeah.
Watched the stuff we'll talk about next week. But yeah, haven't really been too much. I went to a pirate metal club on Saturday.
Briefly. Yeah.
Highlights for playing the Game of Thrones theme tune and taking the Hobbits to Isengard.
Nice.
Very, very strange night. I'll probably go back at some point.
Very. Yeah.
But yeah, I've just been busy reading the
Nice.
books, so I'll save our proper talk for next week.
Yeah.
Which will continue with Projoctober.
We will indeed. Did you have anything else you wanted to add, David? Any other things you've watched at all before we conclude?
I watched another body horror film,
He loves it.
Hatching, which was a
Oh,
Finnish
Oh, is that this? I was going to say Swedish. It's Scandinavian.
and it was like it was Cineworld. It was like a mystery screening, so I didn't know what it was until the film actually started, and I hadn't read anything about it. But yeah, that was another really interesting body horror. It was a bit more of a I'd say a bit more of a tasteful body horror. That's probably the word I would use.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Body horror is the new thing.
Yeah, especially for you. I mean, this episode was a little bit body horror in lots of ways.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah,
Very
totally.
thematic there.
Yeah.
Well done.
Perfect way to end.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Cool. So short personal projects, but I think if we want to end it's a long episode. Hopefully you enjoyed my retelling of Project Nemesis. If you did, go onto your podcast listening application and give us 5 stars. It'd be much appreciated. If you've got thoughts on Nemesis, you can get in contact with us directly, can't you, Sam?
You can indeed. You can send us an email at theprojectpod@gmail.com, or you can find all our social medias in the link tree in the episode description. So if you want to suggest something similar to this, something vastly different, please do send us a little message or leave us a comment. I've recently got more up to date with the YouTube episodes, so we've had a couple of comments come in as of today, which I will read out at some point if I get a chance to go through them. But yeah, it's nice to see people kind of engaging almost immediately when about 15 episodes appeared suddenly on YouTube. So yeah, keep looking at those. If you are watching this on YouTube and it's a little bit behind, you can find the Spotify and Apple Podcasts, etc. on there and get a slightly more up-to-date feed there. But yeah, otherwise, just let us know any thoughts you've got at all that aren't reviews, because those go in a different place.
Excellent. So that brings us to the end of the second episode of Projoctober. We'll have another spooky installment next week, which I'm very much looking forward to, and definitely need to do some preparation for.
Yes, we do.
But apart from that, I will hear you next week.
Yeah, thank you for listening. It's been a monstrously good episode.
Thank you for joining us, David. It's always a pleasure having you here. I hope you enjoyed the experience.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Thanks to the vacuous listeners at home as well for having me.
One last
Cheers,
insult.
guys.
And on that note, good night.
Bye.
Bye.